Eddie Bello and Eddie Fava. Present are Frankie Pinto and Isabella Gordonier. And we have one item on the agenda that has been withdrawn, 3034 Race Street. I will turn it over to
Okay. I'm just going to go through some meeting protocol. Information on each application, including documents submitted by the applicant, as well as post-meeting results and staff comments, will be available online at the city website. You will participate board meetings. You are either here in person, as all of you live in people here, or you can watch on the YouTube on the city's live YouTube channel. For written public comments, you can either written public comments were to be submitted by the deadline one business day before the meeting by 12 noon. Comments were to include name, address, telephone number, meeting date, and project number. Written comments were provided to the board yesterday, 24 hours in advance of the meeting, and will be acknowledged into the record. For meeting procedures, the applicants have been required to register and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff can control the slides, but I also have a clicker over there on the podium if applicants would like to control their own. If staff is controlling the slides, you simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide in your presentation. All applications heard today are part of the public meeting format. Written public comments received by the deadline of noon the day before the meeting were provided to the board in advance. Members of the public who wish to be heard in person during an agenda item, the public portion of shall announce their name and address for the record. And we ask that you do speak into the microphone, as the ceiling mics in here don't pick up very well, and it must be on the record. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall repeat the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Also will be posted on the city website. First item is the minutes, agenda item A, minutes from February 23rd. Anyone like?
Is there a motion to approve?
Approval as submitted, yes.
Motion's been seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
We need to move one item to the beginning of the agenda for Mr. Bello. He's only going to be here for one item, so we have a quorum. 37 noon.
Okay.
I make a motion that we move the item 37 New Street to number 2, so we can review it now.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I will apologize to our audience. We have an issue of reaching a quorum on this item, as one of our board members will have to leave after this first item, and I need him to participate in this particular review. So after this, we will jump back to our first agenda item. New Street is requesting after the fact approval for removal of historic fabric to the front facade and reconstruction with CMU. Sample panel was reviewed on site this morning. It is a category 2 in Charleston, circa 1865 in the old and historic districts. I'm going to provide a little context for board members and the audience. This is the location on New Street. Existing site photos. Some context of the property. These are Sanborn maps showing the history of the property. And they're from our site visit this morning. I have the applicant's presentation here. Since we have a board member sitting in that wasn't here last time, I just got the previous photos. I'll just go through them quickly as sort of context.
Okay.
These are the photos that were submitted for the last board meeting. This was when the brick facade had been taken off and the CMU wall had been built. I believe this is the beginning of what you guys provided for this week.
I'm Julie O'Connor, and I'm here with Buzz Morris, the contractor on the project, Mrs. Ann Thomas, the owner of the property, and her daughter Lisa, and Russell Rosen, the engineer on the project. So I'm just going to do a little introduction and then turn it over to them for the other details. But for those board members that weren't here last time, Mr. Morris was hired to repoint and repair the front facade of the house. And when he began, he realized there was a dangerous bow on the front. He consulted with Mr. Rosen, who was also very concerned that the brick was going to start falling off of the house. So they took the brick wall down. They saved about 95% of the bricks. They are on site. And then they began the process of rebuilding the wall with CMU for Mr. Rosen's structural detail, and then reinstalling the brick. The brick was installed fine, but the mortar was pretty sloppy and messy, as was noted in the last meeting. And while we were on site last time, April Wood from Charleston Foundation recommended up south to Mr. Morris. He contacted them immediately, and they are the ones who have done this new sample. Frankie, could you put up that picture that from today?
Yes.
We were asked to supply a mortar sample to staff for them to approve, which we did.
And brought the mortar sample just for the board members.
And then
Anyone
up
would like to see
south,
it.
did the new sample, which is in those photos on the top left. So on the bottom left is the old reconstruction that was not approved by the board. And then the top left is the new sample tying into the old brick on the front. So we were asked to submit a structural report, which Mr. Rosen did, but he is also here to talk and answer any questions. We were asked to do the mortar sample, which we did, and a mortar analysis, which Metters performed, and that's in your information. And then also the new test panel, which is a huge improvement.
Question I asked during the presentation, and that's out of order. I'll wait till you're done.
It's okay, you can ask.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know about the meeting this morning.
Yeah.
Can you just point, I'm a
Yeah.
little confused with what is
Yeah.
the latest sample
Right, so the latest sample is here.
as the top, I got you,
And
right,
it's going into the old right here.
perfect,
This
good,
is the, what
The
we
not
want to
good one.
take down.
perfect, what I was hoping, okay.
Do you want to see a logo or what you want to do?
A lot to offer other than, we got the mortar samples, it's a typo mortar, the bed mortar. That sample you see there, that is the historic mix. The brick that's up there now, it's, we put it in with the correct pattern of brick.
So Rosie, and almost all of you, and it's good to be here.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Well, are you guys done?
Yeah.
Do any of my fellow board members have questions?
The two of us weren't here last time. But what was approved and what was done? Because that's a little bit what I'm confused about. What was the past approval for? And what was done and why is it being considered an after effect?
Well, what was approved originally, we got a permit to replace in like kind. So in my mind,
But what was the VAR approved?
well, we didn't go to DL for approval, we got staff approval to reform.
For refund?
Yes. And my mistake was not getting, I didn't realize, because I had a supervisor at the time, who's now mistake gone. I didn't realize I had to get approval on site, or, you know, I didn't realize I had to create a sample for the VAR.
But if I'm not mistaken, repoint, like the whole wall came down, it wasn't just repointed, like everything got taken
Yeah, ultimately, everything came down.
without approval.
I have a timeline from the last meeting, if you'd like me to go through it.
Okay, no, and again, sorry to belabor it for those that know, but I just wasn't sure.
Do you have another question?
I do. So you're going back with block and brick veneer. Are there any, I guess this is really for Julie, are there any impacts from having the block that would affect the exterior, the block substrate that would affect the exterior? In other words, am I going to see like a lot of flashing or anything that I wouldn't normally see on a historic masonry wall?
No, and I'm just consulting on this one,
Okay.
being our professional as well.
Or for Mr. Morris,
yeah,
since
but
he's
no.
building it? Okay.
Yeah, you'll see no difference whatsoever.
Didn't think so, I
Once we
just
get,
wanted to confirm.
once we get it pointed out correctly, there's some issues with that.
Okay. And then I have one question, because I believe last time we were here, part of the motion was a request that you asked the engineer to study reconstructing it the way that it had historically been constructed. And I don't see any reference to that in the engineer's report. So maybe Russell can speak to that, or maybe he wasn't asked to do that. I don't know.
Well, essentially what happened was, in doing the pre-demo investigation, found it was a 13-inch wall. And given that the design standards now are more earthquake and wind resistant oriented than they were in 1865, concluded that the smart way to do this was to put the concrete block with reinforcing concrete filled cells, what have you, and use that, and then use the historic brick as a veneer, which would give the same appearance from the street and give us more integrity in the wall system.
Thank you for your presentation, and I think we'll move now to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Today with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We appreciate the mortar analysis conducted that will help inform a more appropriate reconstruction of this facade. However, we do not feel the stipulations of the previous motion have been fully satisfied. The engineer's report failed to justify the approach to reconstruction of the facade with CMU block and did not explore the feasibility of traditional reconstruction as requested by the board. Further, there are not adequate structural drawings to illustrate how the modern wall ties into the existing historic structure, and we are very concerned that the modern construction will behave much differently than the historic structure and have adverse impacts. The only justification offered by the report pertains to modern building code, which is not germane to this conversation. Historic buildings were not constructed to meet modern code, and stabilization efforts should always be undertaken to preserve the building's historic structure, form, and materials to the greatest extent possible. This is a highly visible Category 2 building, and these alterations erode its integrity. This process did not have to unfold the way that it did, and the engineer's report makes it clear that there was time to pursue the proper channels of review before any action is taken. If the application is approved, it would send a strong message to others in the community that you can undertake inappropriate work without consequences. The BAR process is necessary for preventing irreversible work, and the least we can do at this stage is reconstruct this facade authentically. Thank you.
Nicole Woods for Charleston Foundation. ACF has reviewed the application for architect approval and reconstruction is reviewed, and we appreciate the time and the effort. The applicant has responded to the concerns of the board and regarding the mortar, and we are pleased with the quality of the report repointing work. We respectfully recommend approval.
Any other public comment? No comments?
So, want to let the board know that we have received the mortar sample of the joint, which we've now provided to you guys. As for comments, the engineer report does not include exploration of reconstruction versus prior construction or detail how the new CMU wall ties into the historic brick wall. I believe those were both things that were included in the previous motion. Staff has concerns about how the brick veneer is tied into the CMU wall and the sustainability of those ties. And the existing brick veneer should be removed and redone with clean mortar joints. Old mortar should be cleaned off bricks before use in the new veneer. So staff recommendation is approval of the sample and just denial of the current installation for it to be redone correctly.
Thank you. And does the applicant have a response to any of that?
Morris Construction. Feel like you're talking about the report that Russell created for us to explore rebuilding it like it was originally built, and that's never, I mean, that kind of thing gets thought about with briefly. It's not modern construction. It's just not useful.
I guess we'll move into more discussion.
I have one more question, and it has to do with Russell's drawings, and again, I apologize because I wasn't out there. Looking at the detail y'all have, Russell, and it shows brick veneer, block wall, and then existing plaster and existing labs somehow on that new block wall. How is that? Is that all sitting there now?
Back in, I don't know what happened subsequent to November when we first saw the wall and reconstruction took place. But the lab and all of the interior plaster was in pretty fair shape.
So it's just standing
So
there
idea
now.
was- the idea
Okay.
was that we
So you're gonna build the wall up to it.
wall and fasten it off to the lab and plaster and clean the lab and plaster
I got you.
during the
That's
reconstruction.
unusual. Yeah.
I see that. Pretty excited, came up with a method of connecting that to the block rather than removing it. It was in great shape before we removed brick. We went inside and there's a 2x6 support wall in there holding it all straight. Then we removed the brick, and then I came up with a brick ties. There's an angle that you have with a little tab on it. We were able to support that every foot or so long. We're screwing into the lat in the back, have that brick tie come into the block. So now it's way better shape, galvanized.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
That's very helpful.
I have a question. Sorry.
Please.
for either staff or unfortunately you, Julia, because you didn't get one. But approval was for repointing, but the wall came down.
The approval was for repointing, but it was conditional on putting up a sample and letting staff go approve it. And somehow that directive got lost in the shuffle. They took the wall down and they put up the
Well, and just to add, I know Frank is probably clear about it, when they were getting into it, they realized the wall was bowing. They called Russell. Russell said, you gotta close the sidewalk. And they took it all down without approval. Because they had to move fast, not that do. And so here we are, right? And I think too, and I wasn't here like you, but the last board motion said, show us how to build it using the old brick, not just with the block. I think we all understand the block. That's easy. Can you build it with the brick? And it sounds like y'all didn't even consider that.
Did not. Like I say, the 13-inch wall, we can plenty of room to at least make the structure more.
Totally understand that. And Mr. Morris said that's not really feasible to build it with brick. I understand that too. I think the question is it possible? Because the Preservation Society's comment, which I think is pretty valid. And this is a category 2. We all know that house. I know that house. Take down a historic wall, whether it's falling apart, I get that. And you go back with a block of brick, certainly easier and stronger and all that, but there's some historic integrity that's lost, right? And so precedent, we start doing this all the time. Something happens, we just start replacing it with contemporary ways. So I'm struggling with that personally. That's why I'm curious, is it even possible? It is. But yeah. So that's sort of my thinking out loud struggle.
I have real concerns, sleepless nights with this thing. You've got an old historic structure sitting there, and having 2 walls here with nothing on that side and everything. I was worried about what would happen. Maybe we remove that again. Tearing that out, it's gonna be real, it's gonna be a lot harder than tearing that brick wall.
Tearing out the existing CMU you just put in.
Yeah, I mean, do anything. It's just that it's gonna be a heck of a process to get out the damage.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, I'm not trying to make a precedent to do this in the future. This was a mistake on my part.
Yeah.
First time this, or this board making a mistake. That's the prostate driving it. Mistake. We're where we are now. Me. I'm gonna have the nerve to remove that. I'm concerned if you look at the side of the house now, where we were able to literally pick the brick out. The chisels there, but the railing came out that easy. We start getting into this modern structure now that's there, binders and other things, but it's nothing. Clean process. About plaster as well. I'm worried about the integrity of the corners of that thing. The jack arches on the windows on both sides are about to fall into the street right now. Up top, I can show you videos of, or get videos of the brick on the cornice level that's falling. I mean, it will come out right now. So I'm just nervous about, changing where we are.
That's one more question of Russell. Knowing what you do about the building, can you assure us that this won't happen on any other part of the building? The rest of it's not going to fall when they start building it, and they'll need to.
Well, it's interesting.
Something radical.
Standing here now discussing whether or not it's feasible to put it back as it was. I can only assume that in 1865, the economic conditions in Charleston, South Carolina were not built with a sand clay mortar, with a pointing mortar over the top. And of course, if you look at the building, you'll see the extent of the brickwork. That you got one kind of brickwork over here, another kind of brickwork over there, and pointing and repairs, with 150 plus years of history. So where we are today. Julia, back to your question about trying to rebuild it, then you're not going to use sand clay mortar like that. Yeah. Then we get into the question: are we going to put wire reinforcement in? Then we get into the question: okay, we'll run a width of brick on the exterior, we'll run a width of brick on the interior, but with this discussion, we would not be putting a concrete fill between, so we'd have a 3 brick wall, which is what we found when we got there. Which is, I don't know that many craftsmen in today's world here in Charleston that can really do that job. So the thought of replacing it, dovetailing it into the adjacent construction, of course, put back to that we're going to use today, probably a type O mortar, but it's not really all that compatible with the sand clay mortar. And if you walk around town and you look at brick houses all over town, you'll see that the earthquake of 1886 gave you a characteristic crack from the vent and the crawl space all the way up, window to window, or door to door, all the way up. And this building had that along the other issues that we found when we got there. So the thought of trying to reconstruct and replicate what our great-grandfathers did is really practical. And from a strength standpoint, I don't think it's very wise either.
Practical and wise, that's not what we're about.
It's the BAR.
No, but as your friend, the engineer,
And then my subsequent question, are you confident that the remaining masonry could be restored, retained, repaired as needed without some other
as
surprises?
needed. I mean, we've been doing this in Charleston
Right.
For many, many years. So, now, the other walls exhibit deterioration of the mortar, salmon brick, what have you. And we repair those sorts of things every day. But this wall had at least a 3-inch bulge in it when we got there in November.
And
it was not secured to the, I don't think it was secured to the floor framing and what have you. It was definitely an unsafe condition.
All right, thank you. I'll say, I don't like to choose sides between the preservation groups, but I think I'm personally comfortable with the notion of this front wall being CMU with properly reinstalled brick with the mortar treatment like we saw this morning. Just me.
Yeah, I agree. That's why I asked if there's gonna be any noticeable difference. And I certainly trust Mr. Rosen. I think my only question, and this would be for something for staff, is how or if this wall even ties in, the CMU wall, ties in at all to the existing masonry, because I would defer to Mr. Rosen, but I don't know if you want to do that too much because they're gonna move differently. And that's something that maybe you just share with staff, just for the, because it doesn't, you just show sort of one wall section, you don't really show anything, how that might terminate that wall with the existing. So I would just want that clarified for staff.
If you could clarify it real fast, that'd be great.
Or you could just tell us.
Well, from a practical standpoint, again, if the adjacent mortar is a sand clay mortar and the contemporary mortar is a type O, putting stitch ties to try and bridge across it, the stitch ties aren't going to do us any good in the sand clay mortar. So I don't think we're going to really achieve a bond. Even if we dovetail it back in, I don't think we'd get a good bond.
I'm more talking about the CMU, that tying into anything that's historic.
Well, it's
in plan.
adjacent, it's adjacent to the historic brick and it's immediately against it. And tied in, I haven't climbed the scaffold to know. Buzz maybe would speak to it. I'm trying to bond in the block.
That's my only question.
I was given no detail on that, us or any direction, but, you know, having enough, in architecture, so know at some point you gotta stop the fight. I don't know, you know, like he's saying, you can't tie into the old brick. At some point you gotta stop tying into the old brick. You just keep going forever. So I don't know. I mean, obviously, we're gonna repoint that outer 2 inches or so across the face, and that will certainly help us tie in the existing brick. You know, that particular wall, that particular area for some reason, I don't know if it's water intrusion or what caused it, it fell apart. The corners are just about as bad, but I don't know. You know, I thought about this quite a bit, not just for this project, but other projects. Where do we stop? How do we? Jelly, there's no way to really tie it in.
Well, thanks, that's good enough for me.
So that we use the proper mortar and we're specificating too.
Well, I have one more comment, because I do respectfully take issue with what Preservation Society said, because I think it's inaccurate. I think we are charged as professionals with making the building safe and stand up. And you can't always build something the way it was built, as Russell just said, because if you did, it'd fall right down again. And not only literally, but physically with the codes we have to meet. So I do think that's inaccurate. And that's not to say that what happened here, I think, was wrong. It was approved for just repointing, should have been repointed. So the error is that this whole thing came down with, and granted, if it was a safety issue and all of that stuff, that's fair and I acknowledge it. But there should have been a call to staff, wait a minute, we've got an issue, could you come do it? You'd probably hear Mr. Rosen's explanation of all of this stuff and say, okay, unfortunate, but let's do it. And that's what we have to do. So I think it was incorrectly stated prior with the comment on the Preservation Society. The error is in fact with the process and how this was handled for getting it here, but it's where we are. So it feels like it's more addressing the physical appearance of it presently.
Do we have a motion to consider?
And that's after you suggesting that the brick veneer gets removed.
Yes.
What they had installed before.
Mhm.
Sorry.
That was the previous board motion, was denial of the brick veneer as currently constructed. And then there were the conditions that were more information that was to be provided. So we were just sort of reiterating that previous motion, that we were recommending approval of the sample, but that the current installation be denied and that it be the brick itself be redone, per the previous motion.
And just so I understand, the very, very top right,
That's the new sample by Up South. And previously they had done 2.5 floors with other masons and it was
Clearly it's
just
not
different,
acceptable.
yes.
but relative to the bottom one, that's better, but it's still not. What am I looking at on the right? What is this? This is the historic?
The story.
That's historic.
What is this right here? Is that historic?
Yes.
Yeah.
So why can't we get that? Because this doesn't look like that either. It looks better than this. This looks terrible.
Today we talked
Is
about
there any way to get this?
cleaning,
That's what I would,
acid
I mean, it's a
washing.
category two.
Yeah, I think it was the brick itself.
So is that, I mean, I didn't go out there, so.
Well, yeah, you know, you've got 3 wides of brick and you've got 1 outer wide.
Yeah.
That's been sitting there for 200 plus years.
Yeah.
And so that brick you're seeing there is a combination of maybe some exterior brick, the interior wide, some of the cross soldier bricks and this and that. So, it's I'm a little surprised as well as how different it is.
Yeah.
I think there's maybe some work still to be done with cleaning it.
Yeah, What I'd like to propose is we remove all the grout, use up south of the, fix the header joints where we need them. Clean the brick with acid or brushes, however best we can, and then get it re. Plus, obviously, they have to put more.
Right, well, I'll make a motion. I don't have any of this in front of me, so, we can see what's out.
Gosh, you don't have it. Sorry.
I will, make a motion for approval with, a resubmittal of a sample to be approved with staff, pretty much what we just talked about with, staff comments, board comments, and approval of the proposed construction.
Resubmittal of sample is to show it cleaned, to show it.
Yeah, resubmittal of the sample per board discussion, which covers what we all want about. Yes.
I have a motion.
I'll second.
Second, so all in favor? Yay. Motion passes.
Thank you.
You're gonna be sorry.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you all later.
We are at agenda item 1.
Next item on the agenda is 12 Humphrey Court.
12 Humphrey Court is requesting alterations to piazza, siding, and windows. It is a category 4 in Canterbury, Elliotboro, circa 1890 in the Old City District. The location on Humphrey Court. And photos. Existing site photo. Next of Humphrey Court, we're looking down Humphrey Court. And then the architectural inventory image. And then we've got the Sanborn map showing the history of the structure.
Do you have the other photo? There was a photo that is fellowship.
Was that not that one?
No, there was one that was kind of straight on. That's 10, the next one's 12.
Is that it?
Well, that's how it was when we bought it. And then you got another photo from like the 50s. She showed me when I came in that was on.
I'm sorry, I don't recall.
Well, that's what we're going back to, what you showed. So my name is Jason Myers. I'm with MFI Properties. We own 12 Humphreys Court. We got a little bit in front of ourselves. You go back to what it looked like. So this is what it looked like when we purchased it. And this was all kind of a aluminum siding. And when we got under this, the previous owners had already replaced the majority of this just with plywood. They had actually replaced this window, and these two windows look like they had been replaced, but they were maybe 40 or 50 years old. So, this was all something that they did. So when we got a hold of the property, we in turn got in there and started to investigate what we had to work with. Replaced most of the rotten wood, which was under the initial permit that we pulled. I came back and I guess got a stop work order in summer, like maybe August, that, you know, we've gone a little bit in front of the permitted work, and then if you go to the white, okay, and so we had put up a hardy plank, and we had just enclosed that. I came in, I guess we got word from the bar in September of 2021, when we applied for the permit. We actually got our approval from a desk review. I came in and actually sat with Allison, is her last name DeLong? She's no longer here.
DeLong Hill, yes.
So we actually got a green pass, which I was later informed in October of 2022 was an error. And so at that point, we received a stop work order from BAR in reference to BAR. And, you know, we thought we'd already passed that issue. We were dealing with an issue on the inside of the staircase. At that point, I came in and met with Isabella and Frankie. They showed me a photo that we had never seen before. And, you know, it did have wood siding under it originally before we got it. I was informed that, you know, even though we didn't necessarily make the changes, it's my responsibility to take it back. I'm agreeing to do that, just looking for some direction.
Questions?
So you had a permit for what scope of exterior work?
He had a roofing permit, replace all wood rot. And then at that point, that permit, we got a little bit in front of it with replacing because all of it was rot. And we probably should have come back in and got the siding at that point. They came by and said, hey, you need to run and go get another permit. We came down, did that. It was approximately September. So we purchased the property in February of 2021, and this was September 23rd of 2021. We came back in with the additional request for the window, the siding, etc. At that point, you know, I came and did a desk review and showed them the pictures that we had of what it looked like beforehand. Had a conversation with Allison, and then, you know, my builder basically called me and said, hey, it's green in the system, so they must have approved it, which it is, and I have it on my phone if y'all want to see it. I then came in October and was informed that I guess someone, I'm assuming Allison, had put the approval for something on Romney Street in our file.
It was, in our system, it was linked to a claim case on Romney.
And
So
so,
the two were connected in the system, but this did not have the approval in it.
but in your online system, we had a green box. I've got
It
it
had
on
a
my
green
phone.
box
if anybody
that
wants to
said
see it.
Romney Street.
Did you have a
Yeah,
piece of
nobody
paper
told me that. I didn't
posted
have access
on
to
your-
the builder site. Either way, that's where we were. I'm willing to go back to the photo that I was shown because you know, they showed us, this was the first time I saw the photo was October of 2022, about the 17th of October. First time I saw it, and I'm willing to tear this off, put it back up.
Did you have a piece of paper, like a building permit posted in the
Yeah.
window while you were working that said you could replace the siding?
Right here.
It says siding replacement is approved?
We got the siding was what we came back in for on September 23rd. We had already replaced the wood that was underneath this. And then they said, hey, look, you've started siding, you need to go get your permit pulled. All came down there, got the permit pulled, put that in. Again, I came in and did the desk review. Next day it turns green. So we assumed that we were moving forward.
And you had drawings of enclosing the piazza, which used to be a screen porch, all of that was approved, you're saying?
Originally it was approved, but then, you know, once they showed me the exterior, the photo that I had never seen before, October, obviously we shouldn't have included it. So again, I'm willing to go and rip this all off and go back to the photo, but we were just, you know, we had nothing to go by other than what it looked like previously, which was, you know, the house. So we're willing to go back and go back to the original photo. That's what I'm seeking approval for.
Frankie, is there a record photo? Is there anything that he's talking about that you know of?
That photo, I don't know. It sounds like we had found a photo. I don't remember
did
finding a
find
photo for October. I'm sorry. We have so many of these meetings. I don't remember a photo. I'm sure we had something from the fifties, I don't know what it is.
Because it was you had a picture of 10 and 12, you know, and said, hey, they're sister houses.
Right.
And that was the first time we had seen that photo, even though we came to a desk review and asked. You know, there was nothing that was put forward at that time, but that was a year before.
Yeah, unfortunately, by that point, Allison was not here anymore. And the only reference to the project we could find in her files was an email about hardy siding and how we couldn't approve hardy siding. So she
But
did
that
not
was
put any.
also in November, after we already had the green approval in September, and the hardy siding was already up.
But can I ask you a question? Did you all submit drawings that said hardy siding and all this stuff, or was it just confirmation? What was approved with actual
I
drawings?
don't know what he submitted exactly in September of 2021.
But that's what you keep referencing as approved, and it's not just a conversation, but there should have been some drawings, and it's not the staff's responsibility to provide you with how to design your building and the history of it. They have some, it's great that they have it, but it's not on them to do that. So,
Correct, and that's why I came in and sat at the desk and asked for guidance. And it
Understood,
was
but
given.
there, we have no drawings to reference what you say was approved or not approved,
Sure.
so that's part of it.
And again, I don't know what their staff member was doing with it. I had drawings and we turned them in.
Well, where are they?
You
Right,
don't
but do you
have,
have-
you don't have a copy of them?
Not with me, no.
You have a copy you can send
We've done the.
No, sir, do you have a
newest
copy you
photo
could send
package.
somebody? Or
I'll
anything?
I'll do
That
that.
would be good, just to know what we had for reference.
Who do you want me to send it to?
Staff. Thank you.
The BAR email, that's the municipal you do it.
So again, you know, not to really hash up where we were just looking for guidance to go back in and fix it.
And the current siding is hardy.
Yes.
5/16, right? Just the normal hardy stuff.
Yes, and we're gonna go back with the, I believe it's 4-inch wood. It was if you go, there's one photo of them side by side, we're going with the measurement for the sister house, essentially going back with wood. Single pane windows for the front door, replacing glass transom, and then we're gonna redo the piazza and rip off the other siding. So. And all that's in the drawings.
You want me to do the drawings? I also get drawings.
Yes.
Sure.
So going back right here.
I know the materials called out in the notes on the drawings, or when you're like the type of windows and the type of material that you're talking about using.
It was my understanding we need to go back with single pane windows that we could manufacture ourselves.
Right, but I guess what I'm
Done that
asking
before.
is like if we're looking at a drawing, does it say that on the drawing, that's what you're doing?
I'm not sure what all you guys have. I would be.
It's whatever you
surprised if it's
submit.
not in there. I don't think there's 4 pages.
Right. I'm just trying to see where that says that.
No reason to go. Yeah, that's something, I know we have it, so.
Other question? Public comment? Or no? Public comment?
April Woods for Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for after-the-fact alterations to the piazza, siding and windows at 12 Country Court. Concerned about the extent of the removal of historic fabric and loss of historic character. If the applicant had worked more closely with the city in obtaining appropriate permits, the situation would not have occurred. We respectfully recommend denial of this application and recommend that the applicant work with the city staff for its
Conservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society is concerned with this after the fact request for what appear to be alterations to character defining features. The submittal was difficult to understand as it did not provide information on the previously existing or current condition of the property. Clear information regarding what has already occurred without approval and what is now being proposed is needed before this application. However, based on our staff's observation, inappropriate unapproved changes appear to include completely enclosing the piazza, alterations to the piazza door and transom, as well as replacement of historic 6/6 windows, siding, trim, and other elements with modern materials. We ask this applicant to return with a complete submittal that clearly outlines the nature of this after-the-fact request, and in terms of new design, draws on neighborhood precedent to inform a sensitive proposal utilizing historically authentic materials. Thank you.
Any additional public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, public comment is now closed, and we will move on to staff recommendations.
I've had a bit of a timeline which the applicant has already gone through, so I won't repeat that again. And then we just had a list of the work that had been done. So removal and replacement of wood windows with vinyl windows, removal of wood siding, which could be seen in some of the images under the aluminum siding, removal of the wooden front door, historic transom, the hood over the front door, the enclosure of the piazza, and then for the applicant to submit revised elevations to match the previous structure, and floor plans to reflect the exterior of the previous structure, windows to be replaced to match previous in size and materials, which would be wood windows, true divided light, wood siding to be replaced to match in dimension profile of previous structure, transom over front door to be replaced to match, front entry to be restored, and piazza to be reopened to match previous, including the parapet and roof slope. Our policy severely restricts enclosure of piazzas as they are character defining features. So the staff recommendation is denial of after the fact with reconstruction to match with staff comment. And typically when we go after the fact, there's a time limit on resubmitting to the board.
You want to respond to anything? Staff comments or public comments?
We are trying to go back and fix this, and I do feel like there is some fault on Bart for how this did get off track. I'm asking for some latitude to be able to go back and work and actually repair what we've done. So the way that I view this is we are attempting to go back and correct it. Now, I'm also going back and correcting some items that we had nothing to do with. You look at the piazza, that had obviously been turned into a screened-in porch. If you look at the transom, it was actually a half-cut window that they had placed up there. So, the previous owners did do some of these items, and we attempted to clean some of it up, and I'm willing to go further, and we're asking for the ability to go back in and do that.
Public comment and staff comment. So now closed. We are in board discussion.
I would agree with some comments that have already been made that we really need to have clear drawings of what was existing when you arrived, what you did since then, and what you propose to do to mitigate that. Because right now it's really impossible to tell. There's not previous existing proposed drawings for us to review. So I'm not even sure what, I couldn't possibly approve anything because I don't understand where you started and where you want to go.
So, I'm encouraged to hear that you're willing to go back and fix these things and the things you've mentioned, but we do need some form of documentation. I believe that's what staff's asking for in the recommendation, just so that we can see. I don't know if there were any as-bills done at some point in time. Maybe you do have those in your file, but we would like to see this list that staff provided, that would be pretty standard to say this is what eventually you're going to get to. Things you mentioned verbally, but if you can get them on paper, those are the things that we
You know, this is
need
the
to
first
review.
time I've seen staff recommendations. We did ask for those prior to this.
Sure. But if you can get it on paper, that's what we can review and make sure it goes from there.
It's not a problem, we'll get it for you.
Just one detail I'll mention is that a screen porch is not the same as an enclosed porch. It was still open. Screening is allowed, if it's done properly,
Sure.
but it's not
Again,
needed
from our
space.
standpoint, screen and porch, we enclose that after we have our approval.
But I would like to interject just a second, sir. And with the submittal, if you could, with what you submitted, would you keep referencing?
Sure.
It'd be nice for us to have, and that might solve or answer a lot of questions. So with the resubmittal, that it's what you submitted the first time, any reference to what the original structure was.
Sure.
And then what you're going back to with drawings that actually label the materials and the windows, because it's not in the set that's submitted.
Sure, and I would point out that even staff here admitted that they didn't have anything analysis filed. And I can tell you that we did submit stuff to her, and I don't know what happened to it.
Perfect. But if you only had one copy of it, that's not very wise. So it's not on staff. You need to
Sure.
step up and do what we're asking. I appreciate it.
And I said that I would.
Okay, that's what we're saying. So, and thank you.
Well, I think I have, I agree with the comments of my fellow board members. And I think that the list that staff has provided is a very good starting point and a reference that could be used to create appropriate documentation so that the project can move forward in the right direction.
Yeah.
We have a motion.
I'm about ready to make one, but I'm thinking I might even further clarify that we would like to have previous, current, and proposed versions of plans and elevations.
That would help us, but also help you illustrate the timeline, the way you're perceiving it. So
All right, so I'll make a motion for denial of after the fact with staff comments and the requirement to submit revised plans within 30 days. Board comment that those should include previous, current, and proposed plans and elevation. Enough detail that we can understand what we're looking at. Material, yes, clarification. And the drawings that you had to date have no reference to materials of windows or siding or anything that I can see.
Okay, I understand.
I'll second that.
We have a motion for denial of after the fact approval with board comments and a staff requirement to submit drawings of including for current and proposed.
No problem, we'll get them to you.
Second. Second. Mr. Faber? Julia?
Okay.
Dave? Bill?
yeah, in favor.
And the chair votes in the majority.
Thank you.
4-0. Next item on the agenda is 167 Grove Street.
167 Grove Street is requesting a partial demolition of historic structure, including roof. It is category 4 in Wagner Terrace. Circa down 2 dates, 1935 and 1945, so I'll just reference both of them. And it is in the historic materials demolition purview. This property's location on Grove Street. Existing site photos. Some context of Grove. An architectural inventory photo from 2004. Sanborn map showing the history of the structure.
So, wait a minute, it is on the 44, right? So it couldn't have been built in 47. Okay.
We'll turn it over to the applicants.
Frankie, members of the board, thank you. My name is Ben, and today I'm here with my wife Lauren. And we lived at 167 Grove Street for about 4 years, and previously in the Wagner Terrace neighborhood for more than 10. And truthfully, we love where we live, and we like to stay there. We're recently married and looking forward to raising children in the unique and diverse neighborhood that we've both called home for more than a decade. We come before you today seeking approval to demolish the existing roof of our home to convert the attic to livable space. Our goal is to expand square footage in a way that's sensitive to the architectural character of the original structure and overall character of the neighborhood. The existing roof has an offset cross gable design, which makes it unreasonably difficult to utilize our attic space. We believe that this roof does not carry historical significance or contribute considerably to the character of the home or streetscape in either its design or material construction. Ultimately, we imagine a simpler roof form built from the existing bearing points, maintaining the eave profile with a moderately higher ridge, allowing for sensible use of the attic space as a livable half story. This change would be minimally visible from the public right-of-way. The manner in which our home sits in relationship to the adjacent structures obstructs view of the roof line from the street level. We explored layout options to add a staircase into the existing space, and the complex roof structure with its multiple valleys and supports doesn't allow for this design in a sensible manner. At 167 Grove, we have a smaller lot size, and it makes more sense for us to build up rather than out the back. We understand that the board may recommend today the addition of another structure with a zoning variance to the setbacks, but it is our desire to preserve our backyard space, which we greatly enjoy and consider an invaluable feature to our home for our dog and our future family. Members of the board, I know you're familiar with what some would refer to as like a hump addition on the back of a home. Allowing us to demo the roof will help us avoid this style of addition and tastefully incorporate the additional square footage we're seeking within the existing footprint. We ask the board today to consider this question. Does the existing roof structure carry enough architectural value to outweigh the option of a virtually standalone structure added to the rear of this home, which is less integrated and not historically commonplace in this neighborhood? There are many examples of two-story homes, true two-story homes, on our block and the adjacent blocks. And the trend of growing families looking to renovate their homes and expand the usable space is evident throughout the neighborhood. We can reference precedents of similar BAR approvals dating back to 2020. And you'll find enclosed in our application 3 letters of support from our adjacent neighbors. We thank you today for your careful consideration of our application. And I guess, Craig, you can advance through the application and photos that we provided.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
So, I was just wanting to make sure I understood. In raising the roof form, how are the facades going to be altered? Are you raising the gable pitches on all gables?
So we imagine a simpler roof form rather than an offset cross gable. And Frank, we submitted another photo after the fact.
It was provided to the board with the staff letters, or the letters from the neighbors.
So a simpler roof form using the existing bearing points with a higher ridge is what we imagine.
It's not in the Dropbox.
Is
It should have, it was was attached to their letters that I put in the Dropbox last night.
Part of the submittal.
Yes, sir. It was part of it, which
Is it?
So it'd be the primary gable, the cross gable as you called it, and then gable that faces the rear, the ridge at the rear.
Mhm.
And then would it also be the ridge forward at the front elevation?
Yeah, we are looking for, yes, we're looking to rebuild the roof structure in a simpler form.
I guess, well, so it's basically you're proposing to take all ridge points that are on the roof and raise them. That would be from every gable, the front gable, the back gable, and then the cross ridge.
Yes.
Is there, so the only, what they're doing to the actual walls are adding to the, at the gables, the top of the gables, you would be adding to the height of the walls at the gables, the principal gables. Is there any effect on the entry gable or the porch?
We would, our desire is to maintain the entry gable the way it is, as well as the porch with the characteristic arches.
So the chimney would remain the same?
Correct. We're not requesting to demo the chimney. We have a lovely fireplace that we need that chimney for, that we enjoy on the infrequent but sometimes chilly nights in Charleston.
The other questions?
I do have a question, I'm sorry. Was the back portion of it, I mean, looking at that masonry, it looks like it's all been reworked. Do you know anything about the history of that? Was it all?
I do not.
At some point, or was it open or?
I know what you mean, and there's, actually, if you look in more detail to the different sides of the house,
Right.
there's definitely mismatched pointing and things like that that happened prior to our ownership.
It's longer now than that, right? I think it goes further back than that.
Absolutely. Applicants, presentation is closed. Public comments?
It goes back further than that.
Well, it's good to see so many familiar faces. My name is Valerie Perry, and my address is 231 Grove Street, which, hello neighbors, I have happily lived at my house for 28 years. And when I purchased my house, I purchased it with every indication of using it as it was, and not making any changes. Of course, I work for Historic Charleston today. When I bought it, I worked for the Preservation Society, and so probably had something to do with it. I've seen a lot of changes in our neighborhood, a lot of good changes and some not so good, and some that concern me greatly. Vinyl windows, which are the devil, and which I'll just be frank, and also camelbacks, which belong on camels only, and also altered roof lines that change the look of the house forever. And so by saying all that and giving that history, of which all of you know it so well, I would just recommend that the current homeowners work with the city to find out some alternative way that they could make their house work. And I get it. I love my little house. I've been in it for 28 years. And I understand it. I understand limitations. However, I think that there are better alternatives than going up. And I think that an addition to that could be very creative. So, thank you very much for letting me do this.
We're okay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciated the opportunity to learn about the proposed scope of demolition on site this morning. However, the submittal is incomplete and doesn't include any representation of the extent of the roof that is proposed to be demolished. Because the public did not have the benefit of advanced review, we asked the board to defer this request pending documentation necessary to properly assess this proposal. However, based on what has been presented today, it would not be supportive of removal of this character-defining roof form and encourage the applicant to pursue alternatives with less visual impact from the public right of way.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation, HCF has reviewed the application for partial demolition of the historic structure at 167 Grove Street, including the entire roof. While we are sympathetic with the applicant's desire to increase the square footage within the footprint of the house, we believe that this application to remove and change the roof form will irreversibly alter the historic character and form of the house. This section of Grove Street is characterized by small cottage-style houses, and the historic character of this area is largely intact. This alteration will impact the character of the home as a whole. We respectfully recommend denial of this application and suggest to the applicant that they consider an addition to the rear.
Further public comment? You guys?
We have some written comment. First, from Patrick and Gina Jennings from 166 Grove Street, members of the Board of Architectural Review. We reside at the above address, a neighboring property to 167 Grove Street. The purpose of this letter is to voice our support for the proposed partial demolition of the existing roof structure. Lauren and Ben, the owners of 167 Grove, have shared with us their intentions, and it is our opinion this will improve the functionality of their home and have a positive impact on the block and neighborhood at large. We also have from Richard Wheeler, 169 Grove Street. With the Board of Architecture Review, we reside at the above address, a neighboring property to 167 Grove Street. The purpose of this letter is to voice our support for the proposed partial demolition of the existing roof structure. Again, stating that Lauren and Ben have shared their intentions and it is their opinion it will improve the functionality of their home. And Eddie, I think there was another letter on the back of that photo, if I may see it. Well, I mistakenly printed on both sides. This is George and Patience Whitlock, 170 Grove Street. And we reside at 170 Grove Street, directly across the street from Lauren and Ben, who reside at 167 Grove. Lauren and Ben have shared some of their thoughts about what they would like to do to improve their home, but we have not seen any renderings of their final plans. The purpose of this letter is to voice our support for the proposed partial demolition of the roof structure to enlarge and improve the functionality of their home, as long as it is in accordance with all governing rules and restrictions for our neighborhood. We fully support all of our neighbors' rights to improve or not improve their home as they deem necessary.
Comments closed. Board. Staff recommendation.
As like we normally remind the board with these types of proposals, since this does not include a repair or replacement in kind, this could not be simply reviewed at staff. While the roof is finished in asphalt shingles, which do not carry historic or architectural value, the proposal removes the entirety of the roof's massing. This is a substantial portion of the structure. The structure, much like those neighboring it, could be characterized as a Tudor revival or English cottage, a simple one-story mass. Omitting this much of the roof mass would alter the character of the structure. Per applicant discussion at the site visit, it sounds like perhaps more of the structure might be involved in being removed than just the roof. Staff would be opposed to that change. We had some concerns, as I believe someone else mentioned, about the chimney, but I believe you said that was going to be retained. Staff also wanted to grant that we would support alterations to the rear portion of the home, such as dormers or anything. Staff recommendation is denial of demo as proposed.
Would you like to respond to any public comment or staff comments?
Sure, without more detail on comment number 2, I'm not sure, but currently we're just, requesting to demo the roof.
So I believe your designer this morning was with you? I missed who he was, I'm sorry.
That's our architect.
Yeah, it sounded like he was talking about changing where the gables align, which we were just concerned that that would involve removing more of the structure.
Sure, we're looking for a partial demolition of the roof structure.
Gotcha. So that was more for clarification than anything
Sure,
else.
absolutely. I appreciate your potential support of alterations to the rear portion of the house. We reiterate that because of the way that the valleys and the ridges are currently designed, it would be more cumbersome than it would be reasonable to add dormers or alter the existing roof structure without a more extensive demolition. In response to public comment, is that allowed?
Yes.
Thank you for your comments and your consideration. Personally, being through this for the first time, I feel as though we have conflicting opinions in the public comments. We don't like humpbacks, we don't like raising the roof, but maybe a humpback's okay, but only if it's not a humpback. I don't really totally understand, but I do understand that, when it comes to purview and what's allowed for building within or without, exceeding or into the setback with zoning approval, that, we're allowed a certain amount of height and that the purview of regulation for that kind of addition is very limited. So we just ask that you take our intentions as genuine to preserve the character of the home and the neighborhood that we enjoy, that we live in, and that you give us that opportunity to tastefully integrate this space rather than having to add on to that. Thank you.
I might just add that, in response to the discussion about the existing front architecture and the chimney and the archways, I just want to add that, those are features of the home that I fell in love with when I was looking to purchase a home, and I really love the character that those bring. And we have no intention of changing that because I think that that's what makes the home what it is. And I don't think that character will be lost with, a separate roof line, while allowing us the opportunity to grow into the home.
Thank you. The comment and staff recommendation closed. We are looking forward to discussion.
Start, I'll just say that the applicants are adorable. Congratulations on getting married. And I don't think your intentions are bad, but your house is also really adorable, and it's it's clearly pre-1944. It's category 4 historic structure, and I think altering the roof line in order to make a meaningful difference in how you could use it would really, really detract from that significance. So yeah, not great news from me, but in terms of the rear portion, I think it is not as old as the front part of the house based on the footprint and the Sanborn maps. And I feel like back there is latitude to do something that could really make a difference and not be a camelback, and then you have a little extra room to add even further toward the back. I understand that you want to keep your yard, but I can't get behind altering the original historic roof line. I mean, one reason is that the gable end that's brick would be completely ruined. I don't know how you would like bridge that gap if you're just, because there's already on the sides, there's a brick gable. You can't just like stretch that. I think that's all I've got. Yeah. You're adorable in your houses too.
Yeah, I'd say I'm in agreement with comments about, it's not sort of simply replacing the roof, but it's altering the form of the house pretty drastically. And as the Sanborns indicate, that not that it really matters at 35 or 45, it's still well within the window of the historic structure, but I think that altering of the form would be pretty severe with changing that roof line. So yeah, I'm not inclined to see that happen, but again, hopefully there's some creative addition and something you might be able to do to the rear of the building.
Go to a couple of the photos. Sure. I guess I had one question, the one where you're in the attic.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that at? Because it almost looks like there's a hip at the back side of it. The roof.
This one?
No, the
Next, there's another picture.
that.
So I have my back to Grove Street in this photo.
Gotcha. Okay.
And where I'm standing, my head is probably at the main east to west ridge. Yeah. I'm standing with my back to the street.
Oh, I'm
right up there.
Okay, all right. So this is filled in from behind. Inside of the attic.
Overframe.
No, it's all open. It's all open. Actually, because I'm actually standing not here but here. So that gable is off to the side. And it's all open and as you can see with all the stickering and whatnot to support the roof, it's just that there's not a lot of space.
And sorry in advance because y'all got a very nice and polite and information filled presentation. But I agree with my peers because the very premise of trying not to change the architectural character, although that sounds minimal, it is, because as Julia pointed out, you see your gables and the brick. I mean, if you're changing your roof pitch, all of those change. So you're having to either fill in brick or do something. So the demolition is not insignificant of it. And the only reason I asked about that photo, because if the ridge height, and granted, I know it's tight from what you're saying, but it does sound like there's some ability even off of that back particularly, that's had work on it before, in the rear. And I mean, maybe there's a way with something or dormers off the backside to give you some space up there if you didn't want to do an addition, but just based on the fact that, again, just looking at particularly the front of the house, it's super charming and it's sweet and it really would alter it. I mean, maybe more than you're aware, but unfortunately it does. So I'm afraid I agree with the staff.
Do not disagree with my fellow board members, and I really appreciate your earnestness, and we certainly have no reason to think that you're not genuine in what you intend to do. But the simple fact is that we only have three demolition. So, and taking the roof off this house would simply change its character pretty dramatically. And I think even putting it back on sort of gently, as you I think propose to do, because of the change in the pitches that would result, I think would dramatically alter its character. And I think maybe the board think it would. I think it would be pretty dramatic. So there are some judicious ways, particularly through saying that you might incorporate some of the space and then add on to the smaller addition and get some creative additional space there. So I rely on other fellow board members.
Yeah, I'm going to say one more. Just have your architect take a look at that, because I think that rear portion, even if you didn't want to do an addition, you have the ability to get some space up there, and staff is open to some dormers and different things like that. You'd have natural light, so it may not be as much square footage as you'd like, but if you don't want to do the addition, that may be a way to do it.
Okay. And
follow-up, as a follow-up to that, so is there a portion, so we can kind of rework this, that you would feel comfortable approving removal?
I would suggest from the west ridge back, would that be acceptable? That would give us everything facing the street to remain the same, but everything facing the rear of the lot, we have latitude with that. And we understand, you know, the tragic fault of the purview being that, you know, you have no purview over what returns, but, you know, as a young couple who's newly married, we're very cautious of the expense of having plans drawn for something that we are unsure if is, so that's why we're here today without full plans of what we'd like to put back, not only because it's outside the purview, but also because we're looking to have some direction and, you know, potentially approval before we commission
We
those
couldn't
drawings.
actually consider them.
Sure.
Because our purview is only over demolition, and therefore you technically cannot make a decision based on what goes back, only on the demolition on its own merits. And of course, in this application, requesting to entirely remove the roof is a pretty substantial demolition request.
Absolutely.
So, but I think if you perhaps got a little help and got some good ideas, and there are a lot of people who can give you some conceptual ideas, maybe without spending a ton of money on designing something that doesn't, you know, that won't get approved, and you might perhaps come back with something that was less dramatic.
Sure, and I appreciate that feedback, and that's something we definitely may do if necessary. I just ask again if the board would consider approval of demolition from the east to west ridge for only the portions of the roof that are in the rear.
I could not speak for the board. I could only theoretically speak for myself. I couldn't speak for the board.
And it may be helpful to see the aerial photo again, right? So the ridge from left to right, only the portion that goes to the back.
You know, is that even visible the right way? I guess the side eaves are.
I don't think it's visible on
The rear
of the
elevation.
house from the left side. It might be slightly visible to the right side.
And mind you, this photo also was taken from, you know, inside of our driveway, you know, rather than the public driveway per se.
I guess we just have to review what's before us and maybe work with your architect and try to zero in on visibility. Verify the age of that rear portion, you know, for dormers.
You want to try a different scenario, you could get him to draw just some general massing studies or something like that. It doesn't have to be super expensive to better illustrate the point of how much work you want to do as far as what is under demolition. You could always come back and do that. It probably wouldn't be a drastic, you know, illustrative study that he could put together for you. So I think, yeah, we do have to, you know, vote on what's in front of us, which is sort of wholesale removal of the roof. So, but if you do want to come back with that, I think you could encourage them to do sort of an illustrative massing study to show how much of that roof you want to potentially remove and how much, you know, you could work with.
How much of it might be visible from the public right of
Okay.
way. That's an important
Yeah.
consideration.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be possibly decided at staff level?
It would depend on the visibility.
Okay.
So if it was determined that what you're requesting is not visible, Staff would just verify that it's not visible and that therefore wouldn't be under board purview.
Got it.
And we didn't really consider that this morning, because it just didn't come up. We were looking at the whole roof, so we didn't
Sure.
really analyze that.
And it's simply sketching on photos to give somebody an idea of whether you've got an option of some dormers or the roof changes, and it gives staff an idea of how far you think it may go. And then stepping out on the street, taking photos such as these, show, okay, what you can see from the public right away, presently, and what would be seen after.
And we're happy, staff is happy to meet with you, any member of staff, to kind of talk through that with you and what would or would not be required going to the board.
Got it.
I
You
feel-
don't have to come back to us if you're all.
Yeah.
I guess I'll make a motion based on, again, what was presented as a wholesale removal of the roof. So I'll make a motion for denial with staff's comments.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Julia. Bill?
Oh, yeah, in favor? Yes,
Julie?
Yeah, in favor.
Eddie? Yes.
I'm not just,
Chair votes with the majority.
Good.
Motion carries.
I just want to say, I feel really confident that there's a solution out there.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time and your consideration.
Thank you all.
Feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item on the agenda is 160 Church Street.
160 Church Street is requesting partial demolition of structure including stucco columns and lintels. It is not surveyed in the Golden Historic District of the building pre-1944. Alteration, it was constructed around 1990. It is in the Old Historic District. This is the location on Church Street. An existing site photos. Context. Sample map showing the history of the property. And this morning, the board visited the site and they had some questions about a project that has gone through BAR large, been approved behind it, and wanted that for additional context as it's going up. So this is a slide from that presentation. This shows this structure in the center. It's just sort of blocked out there. And it's seen a little bit better here on Lingard and right there. Just to provide some additional context. And I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, thanks. I'm James Seabrook. And so we were doing some, one of the pictures showed a bit on the front. I guess you'd call it just an open air little wood structure and stucco facade. So this is all open. This is the entrance coming in from Lingard Street. We had a permit to do some basic carpentry, replacing some rot. When we got into it, we started noticing there was some structural rot and studs coming down from these. These are basically columns here. And after a while, we decided that it might be a better working solution, because it's not very pretty now to just demo it, pull it down, and put up a green awning. Currently, people sit under there and eat. It sits right off this is the wooden deck at Tommy Connor's. And so it kind of just, we thought after a while it'd just be better to pull it down. It's not old. I think it was roughly what Hugo era, right after that. So instead of just, you know how it goes, you pull a little bit off and there's more rot and there's more rot and there's more rot. We figured just pull it down. That's all. And that's basically it.
Do you, I'm sorry. Do you have any thoughts about how potentially screen those rooftop mechanical units, then this does sort of help screen that. So there's a lot of stuff up there. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, we could certainly come up with a small wooden structure that I know what you're saying, when you stand back on Church, back there at the corner, you can see some of the AC stuff. So sure, I mean, there's definitely something we could put up there. I don't know exactly, there we go. Right, like right here, you could certainly put something up. What exactly, right now, I don't know, but it would be pretty simple. So, I mean, I envision probably some sort of, just a small wooden structure that would anchor in somehow, but that's the first I thought about that. But and this is, I think that's a lot prettier than what's there now.
So, presentation is closed. Public comment? Any public comment?
I don't believe we have it.
Staff recommendation?
Staff just had observation that the corner element was constructed approximately 1990 from the drawings we found in the files. Staff comments, proposals should include some sort of a corner element, not just awning, in order to anchor the building and respond to the street edge as it does now. In doing so, the project could be reviewed as an alteration instead of a demolition. And the other comment was to provide screening for the roof mechanical as the current configuration does. Staff recommendation is deferral for additional information.
Yeah. Would you like to respond to that? Would you like to respond to
Yes,
staff comments?
what was the first suggestion on the corner?
So here, let me see if I can show with the photo. So right now, that column kind of anchors your corner. It provides structure there. And without that, you more or less lose that. It's just the awnings.
This corner here.
That corner there.
Right.
So it's going to appear that your building loses space. Because even with the awning, it's going to appear as public right away, rather it's your space. So we just recommend something to form that column to anchor the building as it does now.
Could you go back to that real quick, please?
Sure. Let me go to this photo. That's just the Google view.
So possibly either leaving this column or building something back where the awning would come out toward Lingard and sort of tie in. That's what you're saying, kind of.
Yeah, we just think you're going to lose more than you think if you take that away.
Right. Okay. So I mean, we could easily just say, well, we'll just take off here, leave this column. I mean, I think that would be fine. There's no problem there.
Currently, it appears, it's hard to tell from the drawings, but it appears that you are proposing to kind of recreate that column at the corner of the porch.
You're in the Photoshop.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is.
That column's not there now.
This is a column. Can you go back to the current view?
Sign reference.
Thank you. Sorry, you make yourself.
It's okay. I should have put them side by side.
Right. Well,
that's the closest angle I've got.
If you can kind of see right here, this is that column that you're seeing in that other picture, right here, and that of course stays. And there's a little set. This is a dark section right here. This is what we would have been if we took this away. This little section here, which is a few feet long, would have come down. But we could certainly leave this, leave that, tie in, going up Church, and just take off from that scene back, and that would keep what you're talking about.
Yes. Fair enough.
Is the intent then that entry element as well, that's a new piece?
Yeah.
where you see that green awning.
Yeah, like you build something new in the proposed.
No, if you went, so this would be removed.
Yeah.
And then just behind it, it's kind of hard to see, there's almost another little
But
piece
that's
like this
already back
behind
there.
it, that would stay.
You want me to go to your Photoshop?
Yeah, so I think that, so this piece is behind that entrance, this would stay. And then, of course, all that.
It does translate to sidewalk, basically, without something there.
But in the Photoshop, it sort of looks like they're adding a column right there. Any questions?
Comments and we are in board discussion.
Yeah, I found it difficult to interpret the drawings. There's no elevation of the western wall to show what's happening now versus what's proposed. I'm confident there's a solution, a fairly simple solution to removing the rotten parts and rethinking an awning and screens. It's not a terribly sensitive architectural asset of the city, but it's just really unclear exactly what you're proposing. I just think there need to be clearer, more proper, precise drawings.
Sure. And it's almost, I apologize how, because can you go back to the current picture? We're gonna flip back to the other one in just a second, please. This is what we have, and that goes. And that other picture is what, I mean, you can't, I don't know how you get it any clearer than that.
With drawings.
I mean, I certainly understand. Well, I have a drawing that I drew a scale drawing that I drew.
But not of like the west elevation, and that column that appears to be at the corner in your Photoshop doesn't exist now, and there's no details of how. No, it's not. It's further back. I mean, I'm looking at the street view. It's not at the corner of what you're proposing to keep.
Is that it?
But to Ms. Martin's point, I think plan and elevation drawing, part of submittal requirements, just need to show what's existing, what's proposed, not just a Photoshop drawing or Photoshop photo. So staff's comment for more information, that's what we require.
Okay.
Well, I think that would be good because actually it will probably help you because I think the point that they were making earlier is sort of by, and I agree, I would have said that structure was built in the 90s too, because I remember going there before that.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely. It would make it feel like it's just sidewalk, almost like, it's not your space when it is your space. Maybe this study will actually help you reinforce that corner as this is our space right here. So it's an idea to hold on to what you've got, basically, the space that you've got.
Keeping this existing.
I don't know if it's that column or if it's a better.
Right.
Because that column, I think, probably was designed in context to this facade over here versus the Church Street facade, So I think if you're gonna take that Church Street facade, kind of like the Photoshop is showing.
Right.
It just sort of ends there, but maybe have some degree of a return to it so that you're reestablishing that corner as your corner.
So possibly redesigning that corner and just showing you a different, other than just chopping it off, leaving that column, come up with something that's more appropriate or along with the.
Yeah, because I would hope that because this zone in the Photoshop, or right where that lady's standing right there, but in the Photoshop, Frankie, can you jump back to the Photoshop with the awnings? Sorry. This zone right here, I mean, this is your property right here, right?
Right, correct.
See, and it just looks like it's
Yeah,
not like you're
I mean,
giving it up, man.
right.
It's valuable real estate right there. So that's what I was thinking.
Would just, and I get what you're saying, and we can do that. Would, if I drew something other than that column, whatever, and we would approve that. And then, I mean, would it help to have tables and things set out here in a picture just showing kind of how it's used instead of just a blank concrete?
This could just simply come back, not as a demolition, but as an alteration.
Yeah, as an alteration. Yeah,
Not as a
because
demolition, just as an alteration, but with appropriate drawings to show what the alteration is and what you plan to do. Right. And it could come back that way, it wouldn't have to. You could sort of skip this step.
Right.
I didn't envision you were just wanting to create a sidewalk and stick tables on it. I thought you were going to have an expression that, hey, our place ends out here, not back there. Is that not?
Yeah, I think, I guess I was thinking that the awning established that as, and maybe I could have added some tables, like this is ours. The awning establishes that that's our restaurant. I just didn't think of putting some tables here to show that that's how it's used. But certainly with the awning that would go back, there would be no question, oh, that's the restaurant. We sit out here and we eat. That's certainly.
I'm ready, I can make a motion if everybody's okay with that. And the thing about the corner element, I mean, in my mind, that could be achieved with planters or any number of techniques.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna make a motion for deferral with staff comments. And the one about the corner to be taken, you can interpret that liberally. Yeah, and a board comment to provide complete drawings and details of existing and proposed plans and elevations.
So just provide a more clear picture. A little more clear.
Yeah.
But the Photoshop doesn't cut it.
No.
Okay.
I mean, literally like a plan drawing and elevation drawing. So, I mean, it
Church
augments
and
it so not to sound.
Right.
I appreciate that it helps fill in the blanks, but just to literally show the plans and elevations of what would be proposed.
From both church and Lincoln. Both church
Right.
and Lincoln.
Yeah, okay.
We have a motion for referral to staff for additional information.
To provide complete documentation.
For comment to provide complete documentation.
And while you're doing that, go ahead and show the screening device for the mechanicals and those drawings as well.
There's a second.
I made it.
You made it.
I'll
Sorry
second.
about that.
I'll second.
Motion by Julie.
I'll second.
That's all for it. We'll put it to a vote. Julia,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yeah, but
Ed, Jane, three votes, majority. The motion carries. The next item on the agenda is 905 Ashley Avenue.
Five Ashley is requesting partial demolition of historic structure, including portion of roof. It is a category 4 in Wagner Terrace, circa 1940, and the historic materials demolition permit. Location on Ashley Avenue. Existing site photos. Some context of Ashley. Showing the history of the structure. And then we have the architectural inventory from 2004.
Request for a partial demolition of the roof at 905 Street. This is gonna feel like Groundhog Day for two of you, but we wanted to resubmit this presentation quickly while it was still fresh in memory. And I want to thank city staff and the board for comments and clear direction at the last hearing regarding how to modify this request for partial demolition. Thank you. So take us to sheet S5. So bring the board members that weren't here last time up to speed. So I'll quickly summarize in this side-by-side imagery. We can see that the architectural elements original to the house have already been pretty stripped. So if we're just comparing, the columns are now not original, the railing is now not original, the roof shingles are obviously not original. The brick siding on the house, we looked at on site at the last site visit. They're different in appearance to the foundation brick. They're also wire cut, and so that coupled with the Sanborn maps showing that it originally was not brick clad, indicate that the brick siding isn't original to the house. And I bring that up to show or to illustrate the point that in the elevations, as we're asking to remove that brick, it isn't in fact original to the house. So if we can, the page just before this in S4, brought up this top row of imagery on Darlington Avenue, which is just one street east of the house that we're discussing. Our case studies in which I felt there were successful alterations made to original single-story structures where the original massing was still very clear and distinct, and then made or modified for growing families. So that is the intention here. Similar to the previous applicant on Grove Street. This is a growing family, they need a little more room. So we're just trying to achieve that in a sensitive and appropriate way. So if we can move to sheet A 2.1. So, nope, you're in the right spot. Perfect, thank you. So we've reduced the request for demolition pretty significantly. Previously, we were asking to remove the roof from this point back. Now we're just selectively asking to remove portions of that front massing. And then again, I'm trying to make this clear graphically. This brick veneer is not original to the house, the window is not original. So this would go, but then this ridge, the rafters and the eave in the back portion of the house, that is original. That's what we're asking to do. So if we can jump to the 3D perspective, just because I think that CAD is always a little more dramatic than what would be perceived in the public right of way. So here we can compare, as you're traveling north along Ashley, you just the main massing, the original massing rather, much more clearly. That ridge beam stays intact, those eaves stay intact. And then the dormers are a more subtle addition to allow us to take that attic space and make it habitable. Also, in regard to staff's comments in the previous submittal, these doors are to replace a pair of windows. So those rough openings, that is the intent, is we're taking a pair of windows and then filling that with these new doors. So I wanted to make that clear as well. Next perspective. So here we can see if you were standing in front of the house, the dormer solution is a little bit more subtle and gradual. And I think what is apparent is that the original gable still remains very clear. So it's not overshadowed by the addition. And then here you can see looking southwest. And again, the dormer solution enables us to sort of stitch together the existing versus proposed addition in a way that gets rid of what has now been copyrighted as camelback idea. So hopefully find this more sensitive and appropriate. I'd like to add that we've got support from the neighbor, the neighbors that are most directly impacted. We've got letters of support from this neighbor as well as the one behind. And then we've even gotten the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association on board. They held a special meeting and unanimously supported the project. With that, I'll turn it over to
Questions?
Previously, the board wasn't familiar with the Wagner Terrace Neighborhood Association. They had submitted something in opposition, right? And now they've changed their mind. And sorry to jump ahead with your comment, but there's something here about evidence that the brick veneer is not original. Did you have that?
That's right. So on the Sanborn maps, there were some clues. The property to the north was labeled as Wes's Plaid. The property across the street was labeled as brick. So the fact that this didn't have that distinction would tell us that it probably wasn't brick at the time.
Questions?
Just a quick, graphic question. So looking at the proposed roof plan on A 1.3, and it's like you are now proposing, call it a double bay shed dormer, 2 window wide, I guess, shed dormer to the front, and then there's a single, and then there's this addition. On the roof plan here, well, looking at the, I'll jump over the elevation then, I guess, real quick. It looks like there's a conflict of these roof lines against that shed dormer, but it doesn't show that on the roof plan proper. Is there something?
So are you talking about this corner
Yep.
here?
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm no friend of a roofer?
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the idea is that this piece has to climb a little taller in order to, for this dormer to sneak under it. But you're right, I think it probably would need to go just a little taller in order to make that happen.
Okay. I couldn't tell because on the roof plan, it looks like either that dormer is pulled off of it or, they don't conflict on the roof plan.
So I do want to keep, the main purpose of this is that I get to keep this ridge as intact as possible. So that dormer would tie into that existing ridge.
Yeah, makes sense. I guess it's just this new roof line going back and impacting
This guy.
into that dormer. Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is I need to make these rafters higher.
Well, or move that dormer forward or something.
So, yeah, this is on the opposite elevation, and that's where my stairs are, so I need the headroom. I mean, we're fighting for space here.
Yeah. Okay. There wasn't a conflict on the roof plan. If you go back one sheet,
Sure.
go back one drawing, Frankie.
I don't think overhang isn't indicated on the roof plan or something like that.
Yeah, see, there's not a conflict there. I was a little confused. There's a graphic,
Right,
one or the other.
right, so that didn't take into account an eve overhang.
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anything zoning wise required to do? You would
No.
setback to look like everything in lot coverage.
Lot coverage above board, setbacks above board, we have a special exception on the northeast side, it's already non-conforming.
Thank you. Which presentation is closed?
We have a couple written public comments. One from Ethan Jackson from 907 Ashley. I reside at the above address, neighboring property to 905 Ashley, which is on the March 9th agenda seeking approval for partial demolition. Timothy and Marissa, the owners of 905 Ashley, have shared the proposed plans with me, and the purpose of this letter is to confirm my support of the application. I have one. 10 Piedmont. I reside at the above address and neighboring property to 905 Ashley, which is on the March 9th agenda seeking approval. Timothy and Marissa have shared the proposed plans with us, and the purpose of this letter is to confirm our support of the application.
Public comment?
Will Fay with the Preservation Society of Charleston. While this proposal is moving in the right direction, the integrity of the form is still our key concern. The extent of the demolition proposed still diminishes the ability to read the original roof form and footprint of the building. The rhythm of the proposed dormer fenestration with the original windows is also uncomfortable. To preserve more of the original roof and the elements of the historic structure most visible from the public right of way, we recommend limiting the shed dormers toward the area above the rearmost pair of windows on the historic building. This compromise would enable the owner to implement their program while accomplishing preservation goals.
Any other public comment? The applicant like to respond to public comment? Oh, I'm sorry. I believe so, yeah. City staff recommendations.
As Julia pointed out, is the applicant had provided information that the brick veneer is not original to the structure and that only the veneer is being removed from the walls. Finished in asphalt shingles, which do not carry historic or architectural value. The proposal removes approximately 50% of the roof massing and 30% of the existing south and north facade. Does feel that any alterations to the roof should be limited to smaller portions such as those required for dormers. While the sensitive demolition request, staff does have concerns about the large continuous portion of the roof being removed. And we wanted to note to the board that other proposals where demolition has been restricted have been contributing structures to National Register districts. Staff is recommending approval as we feel that the applicant has followed the guidance in the previous meeting.
The applicant like to respond to public comment or staff recommendations.
Yes, so I do want to touch on the fact that this is not in a National Historic Registry district, nor is it applicable for one. I also want to just voice the opinions of the neighborhood association, which were so supportive because by allowing us to remove a more extensive portion, I know this isn't in your purview, but we are then enabled to provide a more integrated design. And you know, no one likes this towering element to the rear that is compliant, but in order to do that, we're going to have to encroach in that original massing. So please bear that in mind.
If everyone wanted maybe 2 more questions, can you get an A2.1, Vicky? So this is today, right?
That's today.
And I'm just curious, what is this white line that wasn't there before? What is that white?
I think that it probably is just a hatch that didn't get hatched. It's not a suggestion of a corner board.
Okay. And then, this proposed section, that doesn't come out proud of the brick
It does
masonry
not.
walls.
It's
Okay.
working with the existing framing that is beneath the brick veneer.
And you are proposing a 1-story addition, just
Correct.
a 1-story addition, which is
Correct.
completely independent of the existing roof line.
That's right.
Did you consider making that a 2-story?
Yes.
you consider just having another big dormer here?
So, if you look at the section, which is, probably 8.3 maybe? Yeah, so,
Trying to get the.
so this dotted line represents the original, roof rafters, right? So when I'm under here, I mean, I'm at kind of the minimum of my space that meets both egress and height limitations. So it works okay for child's bedrooms, but not necessarily people that are 6'4".
Thank you. Oh, yeah, we're still.
Very important discussion.
Okay, well, I mean, I think it's better. I mean, it's definitely better. And I've been wrestling with this because I know, you know, a similar roof line down on Haygood Street denied them infringing 8% into the existing roof from the rear. 8 feet, 8.
That had to do with one of our comments. That property was in a National Register district and it had an existing metal roof.
Between Hunter Park Terrace and Wagner Terrace?
Our purview does not, just one of them was in a National Register district and one was not, and that one was a contributing structure.
Personally, I'm very comfortable with the dormers. I think that's a totally reasonable solution that's been implemented for decades. Just I'm not sure about the two-story element that replaces the rear quarter of the original roof. If I were going to entertain being okay with that, I would need to justify it relative to that Haygood Street application, and maybe it's different because that house was better preserved, not just the metal roof, but you know, the siding, the details, etc. Maybe that would differentiate that case from this one. But curious what other board members think.
And just for the board's information, one of the reasons we looked at this differently than that as staff is our new policy statement distinguishes for staff between, we have a group 1 and group 2, one of them being those properties within National Register districts or eligible to be in districts. And that property in Haygood fit within that categorization, and this one did not. Which was sort of why we were looking at this a little differently. One we struggled with as well.
I have to keep reminding myself that we are not looking at what's going back. We are only looking at the value of the actual demolition of the roof. So it's a very difficult thing to get around. But so when I think about the design, I would certainly instinctively say it's certainly a dramatic improvement over what the percentage was before. It actually have to think about it only as the roof, the part of the roof that's coming off. And I'm certainly okay with the part of the roof coming off where the dormers would be. I think that's a minimal demolition. Say 40%, that's of the roof that's coming off. After that is still pretty significant. So it's one of those things, it's kind of on the cusp of whether it's too much or not, based simply on the quality of the house, the significance to the neighborhood, the form. Weigh all that, and I find it difficult actually, to weigh all that.
Well, I wasn't here for the first application, but I appreciate you framing it that way so more. And I guess in the instance of conditions like this, I do rely on staff's comments and recommendation. And, you know, obviously, I think that this solution is obviously markedly better than what I was seeing as the last time. And I don't think it's unreasonable as proposed. I think you do want to, you know, those details on that roofing, take where Amber is here, get that roofing, because the roofer's not only going to not like you, but your clients are probably going to be really concerned about maintaining that little bit of roof up under there. I'm tending to agree with staff's comments and recommendation.
You know, one more thank you for kind of bringing it back to the point of everything. Indirectly, sometimes shoots an applicant in the foot, particularly to show what's proposed. Not that it's unattractive in any way, shape, or form, but maybe it's more really all we're charged with is, do we have a problem with that section of the roof and the non-original masonry? That's one drawing we're kind of looking at on that sheet. I would say no. It's far enough back in those areas. Its roof form is fairly different than what we saw prior, where there was a lot of nice little detail and gables and I would say gingerbread, but that type of look. So it's a different type of element. But it's being requested that you remove all of that is to the rear, with the exception of the dormer and find it really staff.
Hard because we're setting precedent. The difference with this house from many others is that it has a gable that is, you know, the end is toward the street, so they have nowhere to hide, you know. So just maintain that it's a case by case sort of duration. So I'll make a motion for approval of the proposed demolition of the roof with just a specification that the ridge should not be demolished until we get to that rearmost portion. Just to make sure it's just going to be a dormer and not that you would do that, but if we say the whole roof can be demolished there with the ridge, it could be some.
We're only saying what's on the drawing.
But the drawing on the roof plan, it doesn't exclude the ridge, you know what I'm saying?
On 2.2. The existing south elevation shows the area of demolition of the roof.
Maybe that those rectangles are too short because really the dormers are going to go all the way up to the ridge.
So
but I'm looking at the plan, the proposed demolition plan of the roof on X 1.2. It just goes all the way across. I mean, again, I know that's not what she intends to do, but all right.
Actually, graphically, she stops a little short of the ridge, by the way. If you really zoom in on it, it actually does stop short of the ridge. But good graphics.
All right, well then, fine. I'll make a motion for approval with I guess your comments sort of conflict with your recommendation a little bit, right? Approval? Well, the ridge is black.
But I think I'm gonna weigh in on that too, because I think that's a good point. Just, and for the benefit of those who are sitting in the front row that feel like, why is it different? It push back 30 feet and that ridge line is maintained, so that's very clear. So it may sound like it's not a big difference, but none of that is, the ridge line and the height of that roof is essentially staying the same back to the 30 feet of the part that wasn't necessary.
Okay, a board condition to maintain the historic ridge for a minimum of 30 feet and 1 inch from the front cable.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for approval with the board condition that the original bridge be maintained. Distance of 30 feet, 1 inch from the front cable. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Bill. Julie?
Yes.
Yea in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Eddie? And chair votes with the majority of the motion carries.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is 22 Thomas.
That's deferred.
Oh,
Right?
oh, so,
So the next item on the agenda is
135 meetings.
135 meetings.
No. Hardscaping.
One 135 Meeting Street, the Gibbs Museum, is requesting installation of art sculpture at sidewalk level above. It is a category 2, circa 1905 in the Old and Historic District. This is the property's location on Meeting Street. Existing site photos. Context of Meeting Street. Sample map showing the history of the structure. Turn over to applicants.
I'm Joe Schmidt, I'm Schmidt Architects, representing Gibbs, and Angela Mack here with me, also who can speak to questions about the sculpture itself. The architects for the renovation in 2015, and at the time there was plans to have some sculpture exhibited on in the front of the museum. It just short of funds, and we planted easy after that. This opportunity has come up for this piece of this important sculpture, and we cannot, the nature of this piece and the way it's meant to be observed and experienced, it needs to be fully walked around and taken in, and that was easy enough until we added the layer of ADA. And as part of that whole process, we came to the realization that actually Gibbs is somewhat standoffish for something like this because it's on a raised platform, and draw this into the public realm because that's the nature of this piece, and we would
sculpture down to the level of the sidewalk for the pedestrian experience. I had some concerns about that when we originally came up with that concept, as great as it was for solving ADA and the experience. And that being that the back piece of this steps that you see is the original 12 by 12 granite boulders from the museum, which we actually moved back 12 inches to put the front step in front of it during that renovation. But as permanent as we're being told this piece will be, I thought Chauncey Calhoun was permanent too. So realizing it as an architect that anything can change, we've designed this in such a way that I'm not altering any of the original pieces of granite. We're simply going to take them and move them back, and they could be readily undone and placed back in its present position if that ever came to pass. You go.
Know where you'd like to be.
Yeah, no, you're fine. So the pieces that are right here, that therefore everything is very dimensional. We based on all the existing stones. These two pieces were carried to the back here, and then we reenact. Even though these are newer, that 6-inch step, we moved that back also, so that we could have the same tiered effect. It was almost like a sitting area back there on the back. The sculpture would sit in the middle here on a granite piece. All this would be granite done in the same boulder system so that it all feels like it's all complemented. The last decision was what the surfacing material would be. And what, if you want to go back one, I can show you. We had this installed in 2015 as the only public sidewalk that's not concrete or blue stone or brick. And we did not want to bring that in. We didn't think that was appropriate. However, this is a gray, light gray granite, and that's what we're proposing, but in a 12 by 24 pattern around the sculpture. It even came up, even though this is only a 10 by 10 footprint, it even came up that this might be a stormwater issue. So, because we were removing the area where the jasmine was, which was supposed to be paved anyway. But at any rate, we will be setting these granite stones in the same sculpture already exists, as you can see. It was exhibited in Rotunda. It was designed and commissioned to actually just out here ultimately. But it's like an after the fact, and that rate, I guess, like all the other applications tonight, that we're after the fact now placing it where we already built something, or somebody's already built it. Keep this going very quickly, but take any questions.
Any questions?
I do have one. Is it going to be lit?
There is discussion about two aspects, some kind of pin lighting on there's a book right here, and this is coming from the artist is very emphatic. He'd like to see that pin lighted. Angela, we have not addressed yet. Angela is also concerned about, is there going to be enough lighting to make sure that this is not vandalized? We'll have a proposal on it. Either way, it's going to have to be done very discreetly. We haven't gotten that far.
Any more questions? Presentation is closed. Any written public comment?
Nothing.
No written public comment? Any public comment? No public comment. Okay. City staff.
That's some information for the board. This project, originally we had intended to review it VAR large, but for this meeting cycle, VAR large met their cap, and their maximum is less than VAR small. And the ordinance does allow VAR small the ability to review minor modifications, projects over 12,000 square feet. Staff desire was to allow all submissions to be heard, and the ordinance grants a little flexibility, which is why this project was brought here. And while this project is for a landscape element, the property is rated a category 2 on the architecture survey. And policy requires that that type of project be reviewed by board. That said, staff comment is that the sculpture's height is 12 feet, it has a minimal footprint, a transparent nature, and the position closer to the sidewalk than the building facade keeps it from dominating or detracting from the building. We are recommending final approval.
I'd like to respond to staff recommendation. Discussion and a vote.
Staff's comments, and Joe, I appreciate your thought into what you were doing, like moving the stuff. Just your, thank you for putting a lot of thought into it. That's
Is it easy to just recommend, make a motion
I'm
for?
gonna say real quick.
Okay.
I think Eddie's point about the lighting. So if you maybe just said if there is any, lighting or other things that go into staff.
Can I
Yes,
speak to that?
sure.
The lighting?
Please.
So obviously, our concerns, of course, are the care of the object. It's an extremely important work of art by an extremely important American artist. The fact that he's agreed to do a piece and he's able to commission this work for the Gibson to Charleston is quite phenomenal. The thing that's going to protect it is the lighting. Anything we do from security cameras, which we have all over the building, is going to be an after effect. So what will deter any kind of issues with the police is going to be the lighting. So that will be extremely important, not only from a security perspective, but also from a aesthetic.
I think it's lovely, and I think it should be lit, so nobody was inferring otherwise. I just think that staff reviews it and looks at it, and perhaps as the artist is suggesting, something subtle as a pin light on one, like it would be beautiful.
Yeah,
And
I
then
like it
staff
too.
reviews.
I'm thinking of, like to see is, the highest level of society, appreciation of the arts, appreciation of the artist, and some drunk college kid using it as a jungle gym. So there you go. So
That's why I propose charging it with 12 volts.
you thought of every detail, Joe. I love it. So I would say maybe then if you could maybe
check with zoning.
maybe come in with whatever your comprehensive lighting proposal is and submit it to staff. So I would say make a motion for approval with any supplemental conditions such as lighting, subject to staff review.
Motion on the floor for final approval. Final approval. Lighting review by staff.
Or any other supplemental conditions, I would
Final
say.
review by staff.
Final review by staff.
Motion on the floor for final approval with final review by staff.
Sure.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bill.
Yay.
Eddie.
In favor.
Julie.
Chair votes with the majority of the motion carries.
Thank you, that was an easy one.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is 195 Pratt Street.
Okay, 195 Trav is requesting conceptual approval for penetration and alteration for petition. It is not surveyed in Charleston, circa 1930 in the Golden Historic District. This is the location on Trav Street. Existing site photo. Text of Trav Street. Showing the history of the property. Right over to the applicant.
Good evening. We are back before you again, because of the deferral from a month ago. And we've changed our application. We're proposing to go back with the original style windows with no divided lights. We did go back and further detail our plans and just add some of the actual brickwork that was already there. So the newest proposed plans do show all of the existing roll locks and silver courses and so on and so forth. Elevation, the only thing that is changing is going to be taking those awnings off that are visible from the road. On the east elevation, we're removing 2 doors. On that southeast side, removing brick steps that go up to one of those doors and adding a new arched window that's going to be located over the master tub. On the south elevation, we're removing a sliding glass door and adding, we added some details to all of the sides. On the west elevation, which is the most altered, we are proposing to add 2 new windows, a new door, an 8x7 landing, his and her stairs that come down. Everything is proposed to be painted in HC 190 black. And on this side, you can also see where the metal awnings were removed. I know that it was brought up last time about the lack of research, and I went back and spoke with my staff, and the reason there was no research is because there's no research to be had, and I think that's why city staff couldn't find anything either. There's really just not much out there that we were able to put our hands on, that except for to have the CSS David buried below it. That was pretty much the most significant thing that we could find. So that is, I do have a detail of the window that they are proposing to install, which they're going to go and just duplicate what's already there.
Questions?
Series of windows, I guess, right here above grade level. I'm looking at the west elevation right now. Is that, those are windows, correct? Is that right?
Yeah, they go, well, they're actually hatches. They're hatch vents, aren't they? They're not actual windows down there. Can you go to the photos?
Are they flood vents?
They're like barred windows.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There is a pretty tall crawl space under the house.
Okay. Okay. I was just, okay.
Yeah, they're not proposed. They're, like I said, we just went and we added existing details, so they're not changing.
Okay. They're not changing. Okay.
Proposal is to replace all the windows.
The proposal is to replace all of the windows with the same windows that are there, to add 2 windows, remove 3 doors, add another door, add a landing upstairs.
Open pulley even.
Do we get points for that?
Kinda.
Any other questions? This presentation is closed. Any written public comment? Any public comment? Staff recommendations?
We had observation that the prairie style windows and the shutters have been removed from scope. And had a comment that the brick on site appears to be different colors, and we just suggested working with staff to ensure a color match. And we had a question about, we had someone come to the permit center discussing repointing, and that it was believed it was gonna be the whole house.
We had, before I purchased the house, we had to repoint some stuff in order to get through the back portion of it, but, we are looking to, fix up a lot of the pointing that's different colors, and I wanna try to go back to the original look, which I think is like a sand texture. So, to repoint the entire house was very quick. Right now, to point up all the spots that are missing and all the stuff that was dark gray mortar, but that's kind of a little further down the road. It was part of this process.
We just wanted to make sure it wasn't part of this process.
No, this is.
And if it was extensive, question if there was a structural report needed. But if it sounds like that is a separate issue, staff can deal with that when it comes up. And the staff recommendation is for conceptual approval with a final review by staff.
Want to respond to the staff comments? Yeah. Board discussion and vote.
I think it looks good. I appreciate the additional work that you've done. I have just one concern, and that is the new porch on the west side, which is quite visible from the public right of way. And as detailed, it's just kind of like a suburban deck, you know, and I don't think it's gonna age well. I don't think it's good enough for this property, you know. I think it should be a lot more substantial, ideally masonry or just something that is more in keeping with the quality of the building. Otherwise, I like it.
Same thing caught my eye. It's sort of called out kind of deckish, and I was first thinking, well, maybe at least some sort of skirting below it, but then making sure that all the parts and pieces are, you know, if it's just treated 2x2s, that is definitely going to indicate decky. There are some definitely harder cut square pickets that would probably be better and more appropriate. Railing profiles and all that. So there's a degree of refinement. I think that perhaps that stair and deck system, porch system should have. Even maybe some form of a girding at the base. That would be the main point. So we zoned in on the same detail.
Yeah. Same thing caught my eye. I think that the stair at the back, that elevation, west elevations. The stair on the west elevation. I think that the material should be upgraded to better equate to the house.
Seeing those newels right on the ground just makes me nervous, even in 2 dimensions.
Can I respond to that, please? Is it okay if I respond to?
Sure.
Ask you a question, would you like?
The homeowner, and they'd be willing to do, implement work into those if we could get maybe a partial approval and revisit the side porch at a later date so that they can continue on the construction.
I was thinking of a motion for conceptual approval with staff comment number 2. Sorry, let's do both staff comments, 1 and 2, because you can figure out the repointing. And a board condition to restudy design and materiality of the new porch on the west elevation, and to elevate the quality.
We have a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 and 2 and a board comment to restudy the stairs on the west elevation to upgrade the materiality. And
The final review
by staff. Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. Second by Eddie.
Yay in favor.
Eddie? Yay in favor. Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority. Thank you. Agenda item is 72 Drake Street.
72 Drake is requesting conceptual approval for two new single-family homes. It is new. Location on Drake Street. Existing site photos. Some context of Drake Street. The map which shows there was nothing on the property in 1955. And over to the applicant.
Good evening, I'm Michael Brewer. Just a little bit of background, just to go back. We purchased this property and it's zoned for 3 homes. We decided our main thing in developing this property was to maintain as much green space for both structures while having the least amount of footprint. So we have no zoning setback issues or anything of that nature. On occupancy, but last meeting we were deferred. Didn't quite provide the level of detail that we really needed to show you. But since then we've hired someone else, and what we did on this application is we included the previous with the current iteration, and we also worked really diligently with the Historic Charleston Foundation Preservation. We actually had 2 other iterations of this, and you're seeing once we got through that, this is what we ended up with. But we really paid attention to the comments of the staff and the board. And we focused on, we were fine with height, scale, and mass generally. We focused on the proportions of the windows, the scaling of the screen of the piazza screen of the front A house. The B house, we added an element over the door. For Ms. Martin, we provided steps to get up to the A house because we didn't have the door. And now we get a proper entrance into the home. And then preparing for final, just kind of working towards final, we went through and were very thorough about all the materials, all the stock numbers of Southern lumber for trim. We have the windows provided, we have sections now, the piazza, in the rear portion of the house. I think you'll find it's a drastic departure from our first iteration.
Questions? Presentation is closed. Any written public comment?
Yes, sir.
Public comment.
Actually, let me take that back. I believe, and I will double check. She just stated that she Had no issues with the submittal and they were in favor. But I did
Public
receive it.
comment. Public comment?
With the Preservation Society of Charleston, the PSC applicant reaching out to us ahead of the submittal and responding to our feedback. We feel efforts to reduce the overall height and improve window proportions are successful, and we are pleased to offer our support of this project.
Staff recommendations.
Our staff just had an observation that all of our previous comments had been addressed, and we were recommending preliminary approval with a final review by staff.
Would you like to respond to public comment or staff recommendations? In board discussion and vote.
I'm in agreement with the staff's comments and recommendation. I think this is a testimonial to the quality of the drawing submittals that we hope for, the level of detail that we hope for. It makes it a lot easier to understand. Uniform graphic clarity is a big point. Wish we had reviewed this as item number 1, so a lot of people, peers, could have heard that comment, because it sure makes it a lot easier to review projects that are well executed from a drawing standpoint and well detailed, and the drawings are provided. So this is a testimonial to that. So I agree with the staff's comments, recommendation.
Yeah, I will agree with all of that. And I just had 2 relatively minor comments. One about the gable trim on the dormers. It appears that they're the same scale and the same overhang as the main roof. And I think it would be nice to consider scaling them down or clipping them a little bit, just because they're such a smaller element. And the other thing that caught my eye was at the piazza screen in the front, you could find a way to clip that eave overhang, because it currently projects pretty dramatically behind the piazza screen. Those are my only comments.
I don't think I have anything to add. I appreciate the effort to keep some green space, particularly around B. I think that was, appears that was intentional. Motion.
Yeah, okay.
Do you think your items can be handled with staff? If you mentioned those in the motion.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, so I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with board comments to restudy the dormer gable and eave trim, and then another board comment to reduce the overhang of the porch roof on Unit A to lessen the projection beyond the piazza screen, and final review by staff.
We have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with final review by staff and a board condition to
Dormer to overhang.
To reduce the porch roof overhang on Unit A. We got a motion there about the dormer trim.
Yeah, to scale down
the
rake and eave trim on the dormers.
Table and eave trim on the dormer. Okay.
Second.
Seconded by Bill. To a vote, Julia.
Yeah, in favor.
Bill.
Yeah, in favor.
Eddie. And here. And the chair votes in the majority.
Thanks.
Thank you.
One more? Sorry, Andrew.
Ashley's out there, she heard that.
There's two more.
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 minute break.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, sorry. Sorry, guys. 5 minutes. Here. I'm sure the intent was there.
I looked up the jazz person, I forget where they located, not in Charleston. I think Atlanta. I'm gonna go take a walk.
Coming back.
Mike.
So I'm not gonna get up.
You guys can have that.
Next agenda item is 165 Cumming Street.
165 Cumming is requesting preliminary approval for a new single-family residence in Rackersboro in the Old City District. This is the location on Cumming Street. The previous structure on the property. Next photos of Cumming. Sanborn maps showing the history of the property. Right over to the applicant.
Previous conceptual approval, we had a few comments, and those were to reduce the overhang and refine the dormer detail. And that was the front structure, we're just gonna look at that structure. Thank you. So let's talk about a little bit about the site. In the process, we've developed the detailing, and we've made some other changes to the structure to respond to those comments. But I'll go first over what we're proposing for the site we're looking at the site plan, and there's no change to the location of the building or the outbuilding. But just to give you a little bit more information about what we're proposing here, there's a driveway that's a concrete driveway with a planting treatment system with a rock salt finish. Talking about a lot of planting area around the base of the building. We are going to leave the pier and stucco fence system or wall systems along the south property line. Turn it at the perpendicular to the south property line at the house and put a gate there. And then to patch in the concrete block wall around the surrounding area of the property. And all of it will match the detailing of the existing pier and block wall that's there now with stucco on it. Okay. We're just, the floor plans, not much has changed on the floor plan. So on the elevations, one of the comments was about this overhang, which we reduced. It used to be about 6 inches wider here, and we reduced that overhang and reworked the detailing on the eave to make it. There was some comments about it looking a little out of proportion with the rest of the structure. One of the comments we got at the last meeting that I thought was really helpful was came from the Preservation Society. They talked a little bit about the duality of what the front of the house looked like and the side of the house, and combine the entry element detail to simplify it and to speak more to what's happening on the side of the building than what was happening along the street front. I think it still references a traditional entry door with a canopy, but it has a little bit of a reference to what's happening on the side with the brackets for that bay element. We are starting to develop a palette of materials now. We have a tree shading seam on roof. We have a boral channel gap shiplap, true exterior siding, composite shutters with skin forward wrought iron, hardware. The base is a CMU with a 3-coat masonry stucco with a smooth finish on it. The entry steps are a concrete step with a stucco finish and brick tread pavers with the landing. Here you can see that extension of that wall system, and the idea is to mimic the way that the rest of the wall is detailed now with the CMU with the stucco finish and a brick cap on it. And then the wood gate would mimic some detailing that we have in the lower panel from the other parts of the building. And you can look at the rear side of the building. Once again, this is an enclosed space, more like a sunroof. It's the lower screen porch. All of the windows are proposed as aluminum clad simulated divided lights. We are proposing a screen tight system for the area below and the porch. And then we have some wrought iron elements as well. We've got wrought iron rails in the front of the building, a wrought iron Juliet balcony on the back of the building. So here you can see this long narrow building. We have the bay element that kind of breaks the that rhythm up a little bit. The recess doors are aluminum clad as well with a panel below and a 3/4 light above. Again, this bay element is treated a little differently, and you can see that we're grouping windows here with a panel below with another type of wall siding with a nickel gap siding. One of the comments had to do with the dormers and the relationship of the dormer windows to the side and how the trim was working, and so we've refined that a little bit as well. We are showing foundation vents with would be a smart vent that would allow flood water to come in and out, painted the same color as the stucco.
Go to the detailing. These are some general building sections just to show the way that the building goes together. Next slide, please. So here you can see some of this. This is cut through the bay. You can see that we have a custom piece of trim at the eaves that kind of mimics the rest of the roof elements with a little bit of a angle here. You've got, once again, in the bay, you've got a different type of siding than you do on the rest of the structure. It has a smaller profile to provide some sort of contrast to the regular siding. We've got a wood bracket, custom bracket here. Here you can see the concrete steps with the brick pavers and the stucco. This is just through a dormer. You can see through the way that the dormer window is in relationship with the dormer. The remainder of the eave. Next slide, please. This is cut through the rear element where you can see this is that, it's very short. This is the screen porch element here. You can see that this is that very small Juliet balcony that just gives you a place to step out. This is just a detail looking at the paving, the brick paving pattern on the screen porch. And this is a detailed section through that front stoop that comes up to the entry door. You can see the bracket here and the entry element above. These are previous and current proposed. So here you can see, here's the entry element. You can see that overhang is larger here from the previous to the current proposed. And you can start to see that we start to elaborate on the detailing and some of the differences in the entry element here. This is the previous south elevation and proposed. Once again, we refined the way these dormers work and the way that this bay works. And the opposite side, you can also see that relationship of the overhang and the way that we treat the dormers. Next slide, please. This is the material palette to show you what we're proposing. This is that siding. This is the channel gap here. You can see a light fixture that we're proposing on the front of the structure. These are Sierra Pacific aluminum clad windows, this true CVC metal roof. This is that brick pier that we were talking about earlier that exists on the property and trying to match the brick to that brick pier.
On that sheet right there, the metal roof appears to have ridge caps. But it says
No,
handicap.
it's not intended. I
Okay.
think she was trying to give you a sense of what a CVC metal would look like.
Okay.
But yeah, the intent is to have, and I think you can see on the details, we've got a trimmed seam at the top.
This presentation is closed. Any written public comment? Your written public comment? Public comment?
Hello, the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC is continuing the study of competing contemporary and traditional designs. However, in keeping with our previous comments, we do not feel that the updated proposal reflects to increase the verticality of the dormers and ask that this be addressed as this project moves forward. Thank you.
Comment? Staff recommendations?
I just had an observation that our previous comments have been addressed and we are recommending a preliminary approval with a final review like that.
Yeah, would you like to respond?
Sure.
Public comment?
Frank, you
Staff
handed back the
recommendations?
previous and current proposed. I can do it quickly.
You want this one? Or?
That was fine. I think when we were talking about verticality, when we were talking in the last meeting about verticality, one of the issues was the way that this bay works relative to these dormers. That's what I understood the comment to be about. And so what we've done is you can see here that the proportions of the windows are different
than they are here. We've actually made those, triple the windows and made them taller and skinnier, kind of relate to the proportions of the other windows on the structure. I may be headed in the wrong direction, but I think that's what we were thinking when we were talking about verticality. Also, there was a lot of discussion about the detailing on the dormers. There's lots of lines here that maybe shouldn't be there. And so the idea was to start to refine the relationship of the windows so that it reflected the detailing that you would see more typically. We don't see triple windows in Charleston dormers, but we start to think about the detailing of a window that would be more in keeping with the detailing.
Opposed, we are in board discussion.
I think it looks good. I'm in agreement with the direction the staff's giving in their comments. I guess a couple of little quick observations. Find these little sapele brackets that are under your bay. They're so thin. I just assume they just not be there. I don't know, I think when you perceive them, they're just going to be kind of anemic looking. They only look like they're maybe a couple inches wide. I don't even know if you need them. And then just because you gave the detail, and I can't leave well enough, just on your it looks like your porches and things you're going to do. I guess a tile material, so you're going to have a slab and backfill.
Mm-hmm.
Where that's meeting the house, where that band is, kind of got your band down there, like the grades getting on into the actual framing. You may want to actually just sort of step your block or do something to keep that off your framing. That's not a BAR item. That was just, it did a lot of good details, and so there you go. But otherwise, yeah, I think it's a nice looking composition. It's a good mix of materials, and I would assume too you're going to have interesting color play going on as well. So yeah, I agree with Seth's comments.
I believe we were going to review the staff.
Okay, so just clarity, just
No, I would just briefly, I wasn't here for your first. Nice improvements, and was already informed, I think they're probably portion through the rest of the competition.
Any additional comments about the architecture? I think it's scale and match the building are appropriate for the street, part of Cumming Street, different types of architecture. And I would think there's a firehouse almost across the street. Certainly meets those criteria.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with final review by the staff. No, I think that's great. They're not doing any work. And recommendation that the applicant consider removing the brackets under the cantilever bay.
We have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with final review by staff and a staff comment to consider
Board comment. Board comment.
Board comment to consider removing the brackets under the bay. We have a second. Second. Mr. Huey, Julia?
Name paper.
Bill?
Yeah.
Eddie? In favor? Chair votes with the majority. Next item is 265B Cumming Street.
265B Cumming is requesting conceptual approval for a new single-family residence in rear. It's new in Canberra, Ellie Borough in the Old City District. the location on Cumming Street, existing site photos, some context of Cumming Street, more maps and previous structures. Turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you. I'm Andrew Gould with New World Byzantine. So the lot of Cumming Street is this long narrow lot here. And we saw this last year when I was here to get approval for this house, which is now under construction. And we're now asking for approval to build this house behind it. Each of these lots is being planned as part of a larger development where we're going to have access eventually coming off of Line and going out on Cumming, probably also coming out through this adjacent lot and out to Percy. But every one of these lots is under separate ownership, and the program for them is still very much in flux. Whereas my client Cameron here owns this lot and he's proceeding with developing it. So for now, we're really just asking for permission to build that house. And the future hardscaping and drainage stuff is going to have to be because this corner building is now finished and in use, the city approved a provisional parking plan, a temporary parking lot that's now serving that building and is going to be serving this building temporarily until we get a permanent larger plan worked out. So this streetscape view from Cumming Street. Oh, do you have my, is this my slideshow or is this just a PDF?
That was your slideshow.
Some of those.
I can do a little. Sorry.
Multiple things in the Dropbox.
PowerPoint is missing. But I'll work with this. So, anyway, this is a view of the site behind the corner building. You can see the house under construction there. So to access the rear house will be visible roughly from this view, looking up that driveway. It's the lot back there. And this is the larger lot facing Line Street. We're looking towards the back of the house. The new house is going to be right up there. This is standing in the backyard where that new house is going to be built, looking north to Line Street. Cumming Street, and the back of the house under construction. So this is the back of the house under construction, and so the house will be right here. So this is a streetscape view, the house that's approved and under construction. This is the proposed house way in the back behind that. Of course, these both being new houses, we're not really required to be subordinate here, but nevertheless, I thought it looked good for the house to read as a little bit subordinate, so I made a design that's just a little bit shorter and narrower. It's the approved house at the front of the lot. So you can see the design. It's a nice little diminutive narrow house. It's only 15 foot 8 inches wide. Gambrel roof. wrap around the porch, with a curve. You can see the floor plan, and the porch with the rounded corner. Of course, that's something that lots of old houses in Charleston have, but hardly ever seen on a new house. And Cameron here, not only is a developer, he also runs an architectural millwork company. So he is game for doing something difficult, architecture-wise here. This would be a good opportunity to show off that craftsmanship. The building section, how it works on the top floor with the ample roof and the dormers, does actually give reasonable space up there if you would be part of the wall height. The wall section, I mean, you're all familiar with my buildings, you know all of the moldings and details and so forth that I use. And one map, 1944, just of interest, that there was once a house on the lot, roughly corresponding to the house under construction now, and there was a utility building out here, roughly corresponding to the house under construction now. Now, of course, this being a new house, I'm not actually trying to copy any particular historic architecture, but nevertheless, the gambrel roof is a sufficiently distinctive and uncommon feature that I think it's worth just mentioning that even though it's rare in Charleston, it does have precedent, quite lovely precedents actually. 18th century examples, 18th century examples. Century house on Smith Street, it's got two gambrel roofs. On the west side, there's some contemporary examples that I found here and there. And then in our neighborhood, there's my own house, which has two gambrel roofs. And there's this lovely little wooden house at the back of the driveway off of Rutledge. I'm not sure who designed that, but I always admired it. It's kind of similar in scale to the house I'm proposing. Stop there if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Questions?
So, right, so there's no TRC issue here, right?
It will eventually require TRC when some property lines are adjusted and access is handled and all that. I did talk to Eric Schultz. At this point, it does not require TRC.
Public comment?
We didn't have any written public.
Public comment?
Merle Bay with the Preservation Society. The PSC consistently advocates that new construction respect Charleston's traditional development patterns with accessory structures that are subordinate in height, scale, and mass to primary buildings and follow limits. As proposed, this rear building is not subordinate as required by the ordinance and would be prominently visible from the street. The footprint of the rear building should be narrowed significantly and set behind the main house. Additionally, we would like to see the third-story window in the gable decreased in keeping with the traditional hierarchy of fenestration. We ask for
Any other public comment? Staff recommendations?
speaking to Julie's question, it will eventually require a CRC approval. And we did have one observation that it's a zoning requirement. There's an area that is labeled as anticipated future parking, which says it's within the 7-foot setback, and the zoning requires 9 feet of width for parking. So we just wanted to make a note of that because we don't want you to have any issues in the future with TRC. So typically with site plans, we would request that anything that is anticipated not be noted on the site plan, so that it does not appear that DAR has approved something that we have not as yet. So we're recommending removing anticipated future house parking and egress from the plan. So we understand that it does make sense for the board to know where these things are. Other comments, paving and landscaping should be included by final review. The firm is concerning as it is not consistent with the neighborhood and in Charleston in general. There are examples in Charleston, but the vast majority of them are masonry buildings with a parapet wall and not wood frame. The stylistic details of the gambrel roof are unsuccessful here. One of the provided examples, only one is Canberra Elliott Borough. Similarly, a similar proposal with gambrel roofs was denied at 56 King Cannon, which later was approved with hip roofs. I'm sorry, I can't read my screen very well. Staff is appreciative and supports slight variations between proposed building and the new building under construction. These include the porch, the column detail, and railing detail. By preliminary, we recommend thickening the columns slightly. The proposed site plan is almost completely built out with either building, driveway, or parking indicated. There doesn't appear to be much green space, which is atypical of Canberra Elliott Borough neighborhood. No information is provided for the site plan, but it indicates an extensive amount of parking and ingress areas. Green spaces, even if intimate, need to be incorporated. The windows are covered. Staff recommendation is denial of gambrel roof and deferral of height scale mass until roof form is finalized.
I'd like to respond to the public comment and staff recommendations.
Yes. But in any event,
I can go back.
Yeah.
It's acting up on me too.
well, I mean, with all respect to the Preservation Society, the reading of the subordination ordinance is incorrect. The ordinance says that new buildings should be subordinate to existing historic buildings on the same lot. There's no existing historic building on this lot. And furthermore, I think I've discussed this with this board many times over the years, that in Elliott Borough, we don't really have a historic pattern of sort of kind of subordinate buildings on one lot. Of course, in other parts of the city further down the peninsula, yeah, there's the typical pattern of sort of a big mansion at the front of the lot and some sort of dependency carriage house at the back of the lot. But that typology is actually almost completely absent from Elliott Borough. If you look at the Sanborn maps, having a bunch of houses that are the same footprint sort of stretched back along these two lots is actually a more common development pattern in Elliott Borough, mostly because these lots were bought by second generations of the freed slaves in the 1880s, and they very often built a row of houses for their extended family. You can see this all over the place. So even among historic lots that have historic buildings intact, this kind of development pattern of two rather similar houses front to back is normative. I don't think anyone would look at this house, the one that's under construction, and say like, that's an antebellum mansion that should have, you know, a marriage house or a servant's quarters in the back. It's not that kind of house, and no one really is that kind of house. And in terms of the gable window, this is a large window because it's the egress window. It's like a bedroom up there. The dormer windows are little and do not need egress, so I have to have full-size gable windows on the house. Moving to staff's comments, Yeah, as for the parking off-site, one way or another, the parking for this building probably will always be partially off the site. But of course, zoning permits us to park off-site, within 400 feet all we want. It doesn't require a TRC negotiation to have permission to do that. So that shouldn't be an issue in terms of the sort of approvability of this plan at this time. And I don't really anticipate that this lot is ever going to go into TRC itself. The bigger lot to the north almost certainly will, because it's probably going to have at least 4 dwelling units on it. But each of these lots is separately owned, and we're not anticipating abandoning property lines, so it's probably just going to be a matter of private easements for vehicles to traverse across them. Let's see. Now, talking about the gambrel roof, staff's comments are not in line with what this board or previous city architects have said in regards to gambrel roofs. Speaking of 56 Cannon specifically, that the gambrel roof, what I should say, the 3-story nature of that house was denied because of the subordination issue, because that lot had a 2-story historic building in the front, and the board, after some discussion, said we just can't allow a 3-story building behind a 2-story historic building because of the subordination rule, which did legitimately apply there. So I took off the gambrel roof and made it a 2-story building. But in that process, this board, I think you yourself specifically said, we have no problem with the gambrel roof in and of itself. It looks great. It's just, it has to be subordinate on this lot. I've designed other buildings with gambrel roofs that staff have been extremely supportive of. My own house, for instance, and I think I've included some fairly exhaustive precedents that show that gambrel roofs don't just exist on 18th century masonry buildings. There's quite a few examples of wooden houses from the 20th and 21st centuries, some of which the VAR has approved with gambrel roofs. And furthermore, I'm not trying to copy historic buildings. It's from colonial Williamsburg and the rules. I have to make every new building look like it's actually an 18th century building. It's a very different proposal here, but this board has always encouraged new architecture to be clearer than that, and these uncommon features. It could even be modernistic in style. I design traditional buildings, but I think I should have a full range of traditional building forms available to me, including the gambrel roof, which happens to work really well with the kind of keep a building with a usable space in it. Our 2 proposals just today, what people were struggling with the goal to have a usable space under a gambrel roof on our house. See the other staff comments, the column thickness, these are nominal 6-inch columns, which I've been using a lot lately. We have several at Phil Street, we have several that this board approved at my development, the 221, say Phillip Street, the 56 Cannon buildings that were mentioned, those have these nominal 6-inch porch columns, very, very much like this. So that's been approved on several houses I've designed, and they look good on these narrow porches. The porch is only 7 feet wide. If this were a big mansion with a 10-foot wide porch, yeah, sure, I'd use 8-inch nominal columns. But when it'll have little porches like this, the 6-inch columns seem to look right. It seems to go more in line with historic precedent in the neighborhood. And then the green space, I do want to point out on the site plan that there's quite a lovely communal courtyard right here that's actually already built. It's all paved and landscaped, and that the idea of that is that that's going to kind of serve as the central gathering space for this larger development. Have a big shade tree in it. And eventually all this parking is going to move either under buildings, possibly into parking carousels, whatever ends up happening on that lot. I don't know yet. With this gathering space, it's, that the buildings address, it's going to look quite nice in that sense. All right, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board recommendations and response are closed. You're in for discussion and the vote.
Quick question just about a detail. Andrew, can you get a A1.0 thingy? Maybe it's the other A1.0? Oh yeah, that one. I see him with that slope right there. As, you know,
Yeah, so if I,
compound miter stuff.
well, it's just an unequal hit. So the
Okay.
hip- The hip here is
Gotcha.
shallow.
Okay, understood.
It just doesn't look good to use a shallow hip
I
that is
hear
right
you.
in the center of the building, so it's just a steep edge.
Thank you. While we're looking at that east elevation, thinking about the Preservation Society's comment, I mean that you could achieve egress with a casement window if you know, wanted to. And then I'm a little confused about the sequence of events. Like we're not supposed to consider some things that are happening in the future, but we're supposed to consider a common courtyard that will be used by this, even though they're all owned by different people, but it's all going to be the same eventually. I'm having a little trouble with the logistics. But although I somewhat disagree that Canberra-Elliotburg doesn't have the traditional paradigm of large houses and then smaller outbuildings, better than the things that you've done. I think I'm okay with this approach to the massing on this site. And that's, it would be nice to have clarification that this proposal is zoning compliant and to understand what site plan we're really considering at this phase of everything.
Yeah, clarify that aspect thing a little bit. You can't actually see it because of this construction screening. The construction screening is there because behind that, the landscaping is all, well, here you can see. So this is this temporary parking lot, and back in here, that courtyard is all built. It's all paved in bluestone and looking beautiful, and the people in the corner building are using it. So that's not a hypothetical.
But it's not
feature.
part of your property, right? So that's all I'm saying. Like, you know, if it were, you'd be going to TRC now.
Well, the mere fact that we share amenities across multiple lots does not trigger TRC. What triggers TRC, according to the ordinance, is having more than two dwelling
That's what I'm
units
saying.
on a lot. So, you know, I guess you'll have to take our word for it, that these lots are under friendly ownership and being developed in common, and the idea is that that's all going to be shared. I mean, I can't prove that that will be that way forever, but I just wanted to tell you that's a feature that's already built. It's right across from this house.
Okay, thank you.
So just the lot, the way it's laid out presently, function. You're seeing all of those things, just as it's shown right now. So you don't technically have to go for any approval for any of this like that.
No,
I'm not bothered by the Campbell Road, and I understand this is a little maybe different, but just the house wouldn't work behind the front house. You couldn't make it any narrower, and it's like 100 feet back from the street, and I think it's a little bit front, but the neighborhood's a little quirky like that, and I think it's fine. It's fine, and understand the comment about the window, but it's valid about the egress. I don't find it so offensive or incorrect that it required, in my opinion, being changed. I guess that's my biggest question. If things work like they are now, with comments this guy's made, some of the board members made, that's just clarifying what our motion made, that understanding.
to start off as saying it's a, well, on that lot, and it seems to be in great flux, but my understanding is it does not require TRC. So it meets zoning, and so there's, and there's very little green space. I think that's disappointing, and I certainly wouldn't, this submittal count green space that's on someone else's property. I mean, that may turn out to be great, but I don't think it's applicable, even if it is built out. It's not on this property. That said, I do not have an issue to design the building, and I think in this location that the subordinate idea is probably okay. It does apply because simply what's going on here was been done before. I do not have them. I think a lot of gambrel roofs, there are a lot of gambrel roofs in Charleston. They're not really common, but if you drive around, you begin to realize that they're more than you think. I think they're attractive. I think they're often on buildings that are not quite this proportion. This is maybe a little different because of the proportions of this building, the gambrel roof. He's a little differently, but I certainly don't have a problem with it. I do agree about the comment. I'd like to see that gable window a little smaller. Be egress in some other way, casement maybe, or some building. Maybe you could make it into something. I think it would look nicer if they were a little smaller, but I do not have a problem. So I think the detailing is nice. I appreciate that. I think the wraparound porch is very nice. I appreciate that.
Well, again, it's a well-executed, well-detailed set of drawings, which I just complimented last applicant on. And, you know, I'm a fan of gambrel roofs. In context of Charleston, downtown Charleston, yeah, there are examples. And I can see a place for it here. I do believe it's well detailed. Just keep in mind on your sections, you may be either up for strut walls or potentially sizing those intermediate beams for bearing off of your partitions inside. So you can have some pretty serious stuff going on with that framing to accommodate that roof form. It's not easy. I've always found strut walls to do the right thing. Gambrel roofs I've done before. One thing about the comment, I do tend to understand the concept of the slender columns, and I think slender columns can be appropriate. I guess the only thing here that's throwing me off a little bit, it could be potentially the slenderness of the columns to the depth of the entablature, that proportional relationship. It just appears maybe the entablature section is a little bit minor point, we're talking inches, but that maybe that minor adjustment to sort of alleviate the visual perception of slenderness that I believe staff is referring to. And I definitely agree with the comment about the window up in the top in the gambrel. Sure that any of these other dormers, or maybe all of them, just for consistency of detail, you could do with casements. You could even have it detailed such that it looks like you've sort of got a venting height. Opening your bottom sash, you can open to a vent height up there. Even that could be detailed in such a way if you wanted to have that thicker check rail. I guess it would be in essence faux, but you could give that impression if you wanted to with a casement, because I do believe that up at the end of that gambrel, that window does need to be diminutive in size. And I'm not going to get into the site planning issues. There's just a lot of things at play here, and it sounds like there are a lot of development issues that are more holistic than just this site in particular. I just have to hope that any development that involves multiple sites with common amenities and things like that is going to be definitely aware of the fact that people don't want to live on top of a parking lot for the sake of seeing a tree, on their neighbor's property. So any degree of green space, I would assume you will have room at least for immediate foundation plantings and some other things that could provide a base of landscape, a layer of landscape, if you will, adjacent to this home. Maybe it's just my partiality to the Gambrel form. I just think it is a nice form, and I think this is well detailed. I was even going to take, I believe staff's comments about the stylistic details of the Gambrel roof are unsuccessful here. Maybe referring to the form, I don't think the stylistic details are unsuccessful. I think it's a well detailed Gambrel roof. So I guess that would be really the major points for me would be that window, which I think everybody. You're looking at the depth of the entablature as it relates to the slenderness of the columns. Not suggesting you fatten the columns, but maybe look at the entablature depth. I'm not going to get into the site planning details, except for the fact of potentially adding, to whatever degree you can, foundation planting or green space adjacent to and around the home to anchor it, rather than having a rise up of parking. And yeah, that's really all I have. I like your porch railing detail. It's a good, nice detail.
It's short.
It's short, but it meets, there's no code issue.
It looks cute.
Yeah. I love that round cap. Nice. It's a nice detail.
But I was actually okay with, I even like the little window being bigger, I think a little unexpected, but I mean, and everybody's, no one agrees with it, but it's just so far back, it's an odd location. My biggest thing was just that if everything was compliant, Jersey and zoning and all of those things. The details that everybody's mentioned, I think, will be working on.
My only hesitation, just on principle, is that we don't know what's going on with the site. I think that's kind of an odd position to be in, just because we don't know what's going to happen. Not that you would tell us something untrue, but some people might.
You never know. I mean, I can't tell you how many projects where I've designed it, the window construction, and then the lot next door comes up for sale, and we radically rethink the site plan and how the parking for the work.
Right.
It happens all the time,
So
you
then-
can never know how
So then I
the site's
guess we
gonna work
need,
out.
I feel like I would feel better if there were a site plan for this site standalone, that we could understand.
Removing all the captions
Yeah.
that Frankie had mentioned.
Yeah. Right, so what if there were a motion for yes, for conceptual approval with staff comment number 1. To what?
Oh, I'm sorry, number 2. Yes, I'm
1 and
sorry. Go ahead.
2.
Yeah.
And a board comment to clarify the site plan for.
Motion for conceptual approval with staff comments 1 and 2, and a board comment to
Clarify the site
clarify
plan.
the site plan. Is there a second?
I'll second that, and with the board comment to clarify the site, and I think it's a good point that needs to be demonstrated. If it doesn't happen, where it connects with the other one, that it works standalone.
Seconded by Eddie. Julia?
In favor.
Eddie?
In favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority. Motion passes.
Can I just ask for a clarification on what you said? So you guys are asking us to come back to the board. Say that, hardscape plan, I guess?
The site plan, I mean, we're pretty careful about, green space and hardscaping
I
and all that.
understand that. The problem is, while it is still uncertain how it's going to relate to the other lots, I can't really propose to you a hardscape plan. So,
Propose a greenscape plan?
well, it's going to affect where
But
cars are.
you can propose something and then it will change later
Yeah,
if
I guess
things evolve.
I guess I'm just wondering, would it not make more sense to just wait until we actually are ready to do hardscape and know what our relationship to the other sites is, and come back to the board just for hardscape approval?
I don't think we've ever approved something just in a sea of gravel with no idea of what's coming, you know what I mean? So just propose something and if it changes, I'm sure it'll be even better.
We would need to know.
Yeah.
And it may just be, at least in my impression, Andrew, that, you're thoughtful in the way that obviously there's the potential for it to tap into the other lots like you think it's going to. But at least if something like that does not happen, I think the board just wants level of comfort that it works as it is.
Yeah, because I know if our landscape architect were here,
I know, yeah.
you'd be talking about green space.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean to imply with the site plan that it's going to be a sea of gravel, but I'm not asking for approval on a landscape plan at this time.
I generally want to have some indication of that, whether it changes in the future or not. And yes, I'm thinking of the ghost of Glenn. Oh, bye.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Motion to adjourn, yes.
All in favor, say aye.